No, we're gonna have to work on Zach's input again. Zach, let's get it figured out. Go ahead, just select a bunch of inputs and keep talking, and then we'll let you know when you hit the right one.
Oh, this again. God, you sound so far away.
I don't know how that happens.
Damn, that's weird. Oh, that's
better.
good.
It's good. All right, I'm sticking with this one.
I know I hear in the whoa 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 in the background.
We're sounding
which
good
is
now.
awesome.
That is good.
Just grab a marker and circle that one on your monitor.
I got a Sharpie
monitor. Yeah, Sharpie. Best choice. I remember like the old like PC gaming days. Like people would put the piece of tape on their monitor and like mark it with a marker so they know where their crosshair was.
Yep.
But like some people just didn't put the piece of tape and they just had a permanent mark on their fucking monitor forever.
If you only ever play CSGO, I mean, I guess.
Yeah. It's like, all right, you're good for one game. Outside of that, have fun.
What's going on, Brandon?
Oh, I wish I were fucking dead.
Good to see you too, bro.
I'm hungover as fuck today.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't take another handful of mushrooms to counterbalance it?
I didn't say that.
Okay. Well, then you obviously didn't take enough where like, you're complaining about your hangover instead of the mushrooms.
Well, I took too little too late, but to offset it, I ate some more a little bit ago.
Okay.
But less than last week. So I'm good.
Okay.
I try to like stay in like charming train wreck territory, and lately I've been like really walking on the line to like actual person that people were afraid to be around.
That wasn't a microdose.
That
wasn't a microdose at all.
Oh, and as an update, I fully dislocated my toe last week. That was not drugs talking. My foot is like black for like 3 days.
Okay.
God. Well, quite a trooper then, going through the recording with that.
I am so...
Dude, not gonna lie, when I got off, I like double checked my toes. Like I know I checked my toes on the pod, and I was like, yeah, my toes definitely don't do that. But when I got off, I was like, I know, all right, let me check this shit again. I was like, yeah, no, there's something fucked with his toes.
Dude, like fully, like if like this is the little toe, I was able to bend it to a full 90-degree angle to my foot.
Yeah, no, mine moves more like my pinky, where like the toe wants to go out with it, and there's a limit.
Yeah,
like or the side of my foot wants to go out with it. Yeah.
I had to hit up my buddy whose wife is a doctor and be like, is this a thing that I can fix myself? Because I'm on too many mushrooms to go to the fucking emergency room right now.
Can you imagine?
She was like, yeah, just tape it to the other toe. It's fine. I'm like, yeah, thank God. Is anyone else having trouble hearing me?
No, you and Brian are coming in fine. Cullen was, except for video. His name's not Cullen. It's Connor, right? His name is Connor.
Yeah.
Why are you guys letting me do that? Make an ass of myself.
I thought that's what your stick. I thought that was your stick.
No, I confuse all you Irish white guys. I can't help it.
Berate white people based.
Close enough, right?
Yeah, Connor, sorry for calling you Cullen.
Oh no, yeah, no worries. All right, so
I am
still
Cullen coming on soon.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do on Tuesday nights. I'm gonna record with Caitlin and Cullen to just talk about CIA operations. And I want to do that for like, I mean, since those are endless, we can do that for like ever. I just want to do enough until we like catch up on our Patreon feed, because we haven't. I realized yesterday we haven't posted the Patreon in a month, so like we're charging people for nothing.
Well, I just had somebody hit me up in the Discord realizing we didn't do movie night.
Yeah, we've been slacking. So.
Yeah, well, I've also been having like plans on Fridays, or my wife's been making plans on Fridays that I have to attend.
How fucking dare you? Don't you know that this podcast is the most important thing,
right?
Fuck your feelings.
Yeah, I was going strong there for a while, and then just fucking the move.
Actually, I meant to do it the other night. I wanted to stream The Hunt for Red October the other night, and then I just forgot to do it.
Which like that could be a really base title for a communist movie. Like, yeah, Red October Revolution 2.0.
I mean, of all the Tom Clancy, Jack Ryan movies that I like, that one features the most commie shit. It still doesn't paint them in a good light, but there's, of course, they sing the USSR national anthem in that, like on the submarine. It's great.
Pretty sweet.
Have y'all watched Red Dawn yet? Because that would be,
No, we gotta do that one.
Oh, which one? The one where Russia invades or the one where North Korea invades?
Well, the one where North Korea invades sounds infinitely dumber. So
It is. Like, oh, we don't have propaganda state media here in the U.S. Okay, bud. Sure.
Meanwhile, every Hollywood movie that has any military in it is literally funded by the U.S. military.
Yeah, not just funded, but like script and plot editing, edits by the military.
Yeah, signed off.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like that line of dialogue.
Yeah, that doesn't paint us in a good light. We're just going to change that real quick.
They go after every little thing too. It's wild. They'll like just be like the slightest little. You know what? They'll change the word choice just because. Oh, that one little thing isn't quite right.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking nefarious.
I like that their idea of painting them in a good light is still just like murdering fuck tons of people.
God, what was it? Some fucking movie. I thought I was like, I was watching it. It was a new Michael B. Jordan film.
The one where he plays like a robot kind of soldier guy.
No, I don't think so. It was it was his new. He was like a fucking CIA agent.
He was playing one, or Michael B. Jordan just is a CIA agent? Like,
he was playing. Well, either or. Oh god, they're making another Creed. Without Remorse. That's the one.
I never heard of that.
Yeah, it was like his newer film came out this year. He's like a CIA agent who like ends up getting like double crossed by the CIA, but like he doesn't know it, and he's like trying to figure out who double crossed him, and then he finds out like it's the CIA. But then they like somehow at the end of the film they make it like not the CIA. I'm like, okay, the ending just fucked this film, because at least it was like, oh, the CIA are the real bad guys. Okay, cool, this film's dope. And then they fucking somehow twist it where it's like, oh, it's not just the CIA, it's this whole like global network. And like, oh, fuck off.
Yo, I've been like, there's one like comedy true crime podcast that I listen to, and I was listening to it last week, and it really clicked in me as something I like should have noticed years ago, but only noticed now. I don't understand how there are reactionary true crime people. Because every true crime story is the story of, well, this person got away with killing 30 people because the cops didn't care because all the victims were black. Or like every episode is just 30 different ways that the cops could have easily solved this if they had tried to at all.
Yeah, like before I even was like real leftist, like I was still like really into true crime. And like that was when I was like, oh, cops are fucking worthless, dude. Like that was one of the first things I picked up.
I thought true crime was all just white girls going missing, and like usually murder.
That's the media. That's the media, not like the podcasting and like documentary side of true crime.
Mm.
There was that one cop in France it was a serial killer in France. Turned out to be a cop, had been active for like 20, 30 years, and I think they only found out about it after he died, and they compared his DNA or something.
Yeah, one of the top true crime podcasts, like serial killers, they just did a 5-part series on like the top professions of serial killers. Number one profession of serial killers, police.
Yep, I think I saw somebody tweet that the other day, and I was like, I'm not fucking shocked by this information.
Oh, it's not shocking at all.
Oh, Brian, they caught that serial killer in France because they suspected him, and they asked for a DNA sample, and he just killed himself.
Oh, okay, nice. Well,
so I feel like if a cop kills himself, that's their redemption arc.
They become a good cop.
They either need to do some like Dorner shit or just off themselves. Like,
well, Dorner's whole backstory is like wild, where he like actually was trying to be like the good cop and like change things from inside. And like, I remember the one story I heard that was like, they were on a bus because they were like, I think walking like beats. And so they would like load into a van and they would drop them off on their different beats. But all of them were in the van together, and one of the white cops was dropping the N-bomb, and Dorner told him to stop, and he kept doing it. So Dorner like climbed over the bench seats and attacked the fucking dude. And guess which one of them got reprimanded?
Of course.
Yeah.
God damn it.
All right, did you guys want to get into it? I imagine you guys probably want to do like a car talk section as well, right?
maybe like a brief one. I don't know what you guys have to talk about.
I got no developments. I don't know about you, Ward. I don't know if you have anything car related.
No, I don't. I'm not a car guy. Sorry.
Mine's still dead because I haven't touched it since we even last talked about it, so it's no different.
Oh, that's car guy if I've ever heard it.
I mean, yeah, same.
And I hope you were really enjoying the show that my cats are putting on for you guys.
Oh, I mean, it's been making me miss having cats. Like, I love my dogs. Like, I think I will just have dogs for the rest of my life. But seeing the cats fight, and I saw like the back leg, like really rapid kick thing, like that's a purely cat thing. Like, I miss that.
Brandon, I think you need to get like a little miniature wrestling ring and like just live stream them, fighting in there.
They don't do this that often. This is a special treat.
We'll start off. I'll let you guys talk about your recent car projects and everything, and then we can get into part 2 of our Walter Reuther discussion, learning about his life and times and anything he accomplished as a labor leader. So, if you guys want to take it away with your car projects, what do you got going on?
Well, who are we starting with?
Yeah, what order do we want to go in?
Let's just be easy and go alphabetical. I'll hammer this out real quick.
Go for it.
This week was not completely fruitless. I found a machine shop to resurface the cylinder heads that I found were kind of messed up. Not only did they charge me a very reasonable price, their turnaround time was about 20 hours. And
That's not bad at all. That's crazy good.
when I showed up to pick them up, the guy charged me $20 less than he had said. So
Cool.
That is a win right there.
yeah, I am sold on this place for machine work in the future. I went ahead and gave the dude an extra $20. I'm like, go fucking buy lunch. I was expecting to wait a week and be charged over. So I don't think, as a machinist myself, I've never been tipped for it. So maybe I made the guy's day. I don't know. Otherwise, I'm putting a new 4-pans in my buddy's box truck because they just rotted to shit, and he's trading me a transmission to do so. And it's the transmission I want to put in my van, so that's a win.
That's a real big win. Yeah.
And I've finally figured out a paint scheme and name for the chopper that I'm building, and it's really fucked up. So I probably shouldn't even talk about it on air. But I'm gonna do like water slide decal transfers of like pixelated gore on my gas tank.
Okay.
I paint it like really nice, like metal flake, gold leaf, but like I want like extreme facial injuries. Because like the listeners can't tell this, but I'm like a gnarly fucking looking dude. So like I wanted something nice, but that also suits me. So I'm just going to make it really like well done, but also fucked up. And I'm naming it the 5 stages of grief.
I like that. That's cool. It's just got that cool chopper feel. I'm with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to see that when it's finished. I'm having trouble visualizing the concept, but it sounds interesting.
Well, just be my friend in 5 years.
Okay. I'll try.
Yeah. Other than that, I've wrenched on the motor a little bit, but that's about it for me. So Brian, handing it off.
Well, cool. I haven't done a whole lot. I did order a bunch of parts for my MR2. I forget what we talked about last week, but I've decided just to basically replace everything, the clutch and any bearings and whatnot in there. I don't know, a couple other things. I probably won't do poly-filled motor mounts, but I do have some spare motor mounts that I could do that with if I needed to. And then, what was I going to say?
Wait, why not the poly-filled bushings? That seems like a solid upgrade.
I mean, I don't know if it really needs it. Like, it's only making maybe 100 horsepower anyways.
It feels great. I have solid mounts, by the way, and it feels fucking cool.
Yeah.
Feels like a race car all the time.
I don't know. I mean, it's not that hard to change motor mounts on this car, so, like, I might just do it anyways, like, have a set. Because I've got a set that's OEM rubber ones that are in decent shape. I might just, be able to switch those out if I want to, but I don't know. We'll see. I'll look into that a little bit more. I also ordered a new intake gasket for my Subaru. So eventually I'm going to do when I'm done with the MR2, I'm going to put the Subaru in the garage and take off the intake manifold because I got to redo the fuel lines underneath that. Subaru in their infinite wisdom decided to run rubber hoses on top of the engine underneath the intake manifold for the fuel. And they dry out and rot and crack and leak. So that's what's happening. And it's real fun. It leaks fuel when it's cold and everything kind of shrinks up a little bit. But what else have I been doing? Oh, I went on a date to Meow Wolf in Denver the other day, which was pretty sweet. I mean, it's not automotive or whatever, but would recommend. I was a little bit more sober than I had hoped for. So, make sure you're not, too sober when you go there.
Just not a problem I ever encounter.
I was gonna say, what is Meow Wolf?
It's just, there's another one. It started in Santa Fe, I want to say. And it's like some sort of like, or at least I don't know what it is right now, but it started as like this art collective thing. And the idea is that like you go through these different rooms and it's supposed to tell like a story. But it's basically the premise is that like you get in this elevator and then you go up to like you're in like another dimension or something. And it's like you're walking through like the set of a sci-fi movie like made by Jim Henson or something. There's this one part that's like, I don't know, Fraggle Rock, and another part that's like dystopian sci-fi thing or whatever. It's pretty interesting.
Okay,
cool.
So edibles.
I'm pretty upfront about my hallucinogen use on this. I always feel like I'm in another dimension. I don't think I need your Meow Wolf.
Being on psychedelics in Meow Wolf is a whole nother level. It's a lot of fun. I went to the one in Santa Fe a couple years ago, and I'm going to the Denver one later this month. So
nice.
Yeah, I was about to say, that does sound like you know this from experience.
Oh, yeah. Lots and lots of psychedelics makes a great day.
Always true.
Yeah. Oh, and one more thing, the listeners can't see it, but you all can see right up here, I've got my MR2 poster that I put up on the wall. So,
nice.
Repping that.
Oh, yeah, MR2.
It's actually it's a Japanese sales brochure. So it's, like 20 pages or whatever. So I can just, pull out the push pins and switch it to a different page if I'm feeling like a change. But I like this one. I like that color scheme, the two-tone sort of beige and dark green, I think is what it is.
Oh, yeah, I did zoom in on your video, but I see it.
Yeah. So that's all I got, Connor.
On my end, the Nissan had the engine rebuilt. Everything looks good. I think last week we couldn't start it. So we did manage to get it started after some tweaking and stuff, which I think I think we actually had gotten it started when we last spoke. So it was at the tuner shop and they did the break-in on the dyno, and we did skip the 500-mile break-in post the initial startup and all that. So like they ran it on the dyno for, half an hour or something, did their little procedure to get the piston rings to seat. Then they changed the oil, and then they just, did it on the dyno, did the actual full tune with like pulls and all that. So it made pretty not great power numbers, although I wasn't expecting to make, a lot of power. I mostly built the motor to.
So like what, 350?
Yeah. I mean, it was about 305 horsepower, which is, again,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's not awful.
At the wheels? I mean,
yeah, at the wheels.
That's decent.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
It feels good, not gonna lie.
For a race car that you drive, yeah, like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, nowadays you can go to the dealer and get, something that's going to come out with 400 and 500 horsepower. That, so this is not that, but on the track, it's pretty decent. It was good, obviously before that, making a lot less horsepower. So it's definitely an upgrade.
300 horsepower that you put together yourself is way fucking cooler than 400 or 500 horsepower fresh off the dealership.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. The torque was a little bit lower than I expected. So there's, I think, some kind of limiting factor somewhere. And I think it's probably somewhere in the air intake, but that's something I can worry about later. The torque was at like 274 max. So this was more top end power rather than low end torque, which I did know it was going to be that. It was just a little bit more pronounced than I expected. So anyway, I drove it from I picked it up from the tuner, and on the way to the other shop, the car died like 4 times. So something is not quite right. We don't know what yet, but something, isn't quite there, which we're running some tests, like doing an idle air volume relearn and all that shit. Typical procedures to account for some of the modifications and all that, which I would have hoped the fucking tuner would have done, but, they didn't. So I was a little bit surprised. I was like, hey, when I pick this up after it's gone through a full dyno tune, the car shouldn't die on the way home. That's, probably not what I'm looking for. So I was a little disappointed. My guy at the shop is still kind of fucking around with it. We had a couple other odds and ends to finish anyway. So he's looking at it, trying to run some, various procedures to see if he can make it better. And maybe the computer just needs to like learn some shit because they do kind of have to teach themselves. So it may just have to like work itself out for a while. We're not sure, but I should know more next week, and it may need some tweaks. And, from my perspective, I'm like, hey, I don't know, maybe it'll make a little more power if the thing's running right and doesn't fucking die when it's not supposed to. So who knows?
Or maybe you built an engine that only wants to run at like $5,000.
Yeah.
No, it feels good up top. It really does. It's got more to give. So it does feel very good. It's a different power band. So it's going to take some getting used to for sure. But I don't know. It's running. It's working. It's just not optimal yet. So more to come, I guess.
Yeah. And you got like headers and an intake and a couple other things on there too, right?
I got everything. Anything you can put on there besides a turbo or supercharger, it has it. So
nice.
It's cams, awesome. Ported heads, ported intake, all that shit. Higher compression pistons.
What's your bottom end? Is it all forged?
Mm-hmm. All forged. Sick. Yeah, Wiseco pistons and Eagle rods.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, I have no criticisms of what you've built.
Yeah,
I can come up with something, but it wouldn't be from the heart.
No, it should work really well for drifting because again, it had plenty of power for drifting before this. Now it should be really easy to keep it in drift at those higher speeds, and I should be able to like put down a little more grip with it. So should be better. But I'm back in training wheels. I got to get used to shit again. So back to the basics. But anyway, that's all I got.
Ron, are you going to be able to sneak in another track day this season, or are they pretty much closed up for the year where you are?
This season, for sure. Yeah. I'm trying to do an event in Ohio in 3 weeks now, and I'm trying to negotiate around Dayton. There's a track. So yeah, we could talk about that later. So I had to like get some safety equipment done, like fire extinguisher and fucking I gotta get new helmets and all that stuff to run this event. So I'm kind of up against the clock on that. Should be a fun event if I can make it. Otherwise, I'll do some more local events here till it's snowing at least. I will run it this season, but I'm trying to get out to Ohio right now because that's a pretty good track. Should be. I've never been to it. Should be fun, and we'll see. If I can get out there. Whenever I do get out there, I'm going to try and meet up with Brett from Street Fight. So that would be fun. Yeah. So we'll see if I can get there. But otherwise, I'll drift on the street. It's fine. I will be, as long as the car is running, it's going to slide. So
sweet.
That's awesome.
So Zach, what have you been up to?
Oh man, had another fun time with the Danger Ranger. That thing has been a fucking pain in my ass. Yeah, I got the transmission in finally. It shipped. Let's see, I think the ship date was September 16th from Florida, and I just had to go pick it up from a local warehouse on Friday because it wasn't going to be to my home delivery address until later this week. So I'm going to try to get my residential delivery feedback from them because they did not deliver it residentially. I went and had to go fucking pick it up because it's been 3 goddamn weeks that it's been shipping for. So I got the transmission and I went to install it and I put the torque converter onto the transmission. I was going to put that package up onto the back of my engine, I had my dad helping me out. And, we were getting up there, getting it kind of lined up, working it up on there. And at some point, the torque converter moved forward. And so it was up against the flex plate. And so my dad's like, oh, let's turn the motor over, get the flex plate lined up. And then the torque converter will be on the flex plate. And then we'll put the transmission up onto the torque converter. I was like, I don't know, man, that seems like the wrong way to do it. I feel like we're just going to fuck with it for like 2 hours and then be back in the same place we were to begin with. I really think we should just pull it back off and, do it torque converter to transmission and then put that on the engine. He's like, nah, man, that's good. I've done this a bunch of times. I was like, I don't know, man, I got a bad feeling about this. I feel like it's going to get fucked up. He's like, it'll be fine. Trust me. I've done it before. You trust me. We're doing it this way. I'm not pulling it back off and redoing it. I was like, all right, man, cool. So we get it on there and we get some bolts started and get everything sucked up together. And we go to turn the motor over by hand, and it is fucking seized. Will not turn.
Oh, geez.
So I was like, okay, something serious is wrong here. Pull it back off. And we go to turn the input shaft on the transmission by hand. My brand new rebuilt transmission, and it's just locked. It won't turn at all. I was like, oh shit, here we go. So we called around to some local transmission shops and talked to one nearby, and they were like, yeah, it's probably your front pump. You probably broke the front pump and pushed the input shaft into it and basically just stuck them together accidentally. But that's going to be like $200 or $300 to repair. And they said they'll have it done Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll see if both of those things come true. But yeah, that's where I am now.
That sucks,
the busted
man.
transmission.
So
yeah, I'm pretty bummed.
to make sure I understood you correctly, you broke it when you were trying to put it on, or it came broken from the rebuild?
We broke it trying to put it on.
Okay. I thought that's what you were saying, but I was hoping that I was like, no, call them. Tell them it's bad.
Oh, yeah. No, if there was any chance that it was like that delivered, I would be calling them for sure. But no, I'm 100% certain it was the fact that the torque converter did not line up with the input shaft, and we just sandwiched them together, and it just shoved the input shaft down into the front pump.
Yeah. I'm not supposed to do that.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I was pretty pissed.
Well, for any listeners who are wondering, we're all telling horror stories about, our working on our cars and stuff. But as Brandon often says, it is still cheaper to fuck it up 2 or 3 times on your own than to pay someone else to do it.
Yep. That is wise words.
That's how I learned to do everything I know how to do, is refusing to pay someone else to do it.
Yeah, I mean, labor is generally 50% of the cost of any job if you take it to a shop.
And the worker's not getting that, by the way.
50% labor. Yeah, no. Not even.
The last construction job I did, a lot of the people who were doing stuff on people's houses or building parts of people's houses were learning how to do it on YouTube like the day before doing that process, like on someone's house or whatever. And it's like,
oh, that's reassuring.
Yeah, exactly. You could pay that premium for that labor for quote unquote professionals, and that kind of thing is still going to be happening. And it's like, you may as well just like skip the step in the middle and learn how to do it yourself off YouTube and do it.
Yeah, I don't think that you could pick 5 people off the street and not have at least one of them that's taken their car to a mechanic or had some work done by a professional where it didn't just get absolutely butchered.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, like, realistically, even like a top quality professionals, there's still room for error. Like, people make mistakes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's incompetence and sometimes it's an honest mistake, but it still sucks either way. So I personally just prefer being mad at myself. So, it's easier for me if I fuck it up, be like, well, damn it, self, why did you do that? Than for me to, like, spend an extra $1,500 for someone else to fuck it up and be like, well, wait, what? What did they give you money for?
Yeah.
I find it way easier to forgive myself after I fuck something up. I'm like, oh man, at least I learned something. If somebody else fucks my stuff up, I'm like, oh, it's you and me, buddy. It's on now. Not that I can do anything, but I'm going to be mad at you and hold a grudge for a long time and tell him.
I mean, actually, I can remember every instance of a mechanic fucking up something on my car, no matter how minor, whether it was the seal on my tires or ripping the little plastic guard off of the underneath the oil pan where you go to, if you go to like Jiffy Lube, and instead of like when you have like a new Japanese car or something, there's like a little plastic cover over that where they need to access to change the oil. And instead of just unscrewing it, they just rip it right off because they know no one's ever going to look under their car except for this motherfucker.
Yeah. And Mike, your construction story reminded me, there was a thread on Hexbear the other day that was horror stories from work. And there were some pretty terrible ones from people working in construction. One was like a 14-year-old undocumented kid who like fell down and hurt himself, and like, well, it happens, was what the boss said. Yeah. Like he said he was an adult. I don't know. There's some pretty terrible stories on that one. I did also think of another thing about my MR2. I started taking some parts off to gain access to the transmission. And one of the cool things about that car is, since the engine is in the back, if you take the trunk lid off, you can just sit in the trunk and work on the engine right there. It's very convenient.
That's the case with my early vans. I can like sit inside on the wheel well and just like pull my fucking intake if I want to.
Yeah.
That's one thing I miss about old American cars, is they have monstrous engine bays. I can just sit inside the engine bay and work on stuff now. I'm like got 11 extensions and wobble sockets stuck together to get one bolt because there's no room in modern cars.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the case when I tear into the Subaru. But thanks, Zach, also for volunteering to loan me your engine hoist. That's going to help out quite a bit.
Oh, hell yeah, buddy. I'm excited to come give you a hand. I've never worked on anything rear mid-engine before, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
I mean, it's basically just a Corolla, but backwards, you know. Mm-hmm. It's nothing.
It just makes it 1,000 times cooler.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. Just put the engine on the other side of the seats, and now cool factor times 1,000,000.
Well, that's just like a lot of American engineering. It's a good idea, but backwards.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much does it for the car updates, I think, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Sweet. Anybody down for a quick break before we get started, or anyone cool with that?
Yeah, if you want,
cool with that.
I can go to the bathroom.
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to imbibe some liquor.
Okay. Cool.
Smirker Burl. I don't know if you. I'm a little high today. That's why I'm a little more reserved than I was last week. So.
Sweet. While we're on this break,
in like 2 minutes.
I took the perfect amount of mushrooms today.
Oh, perfect. All right, Brandon, there you go. Glad to hear it.
I'm coherent, but you are so colorful.
What were you gonna say, Connor? Sorry.
I was gonna say I am still having a hard time seeing you, Ward, and Zach. You guys are just two rotating boxes on my end.
I gave up on seeing Zach.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's like.
That's fair. Most people do.
All right, let's jump out of here and then see if that fixes the video issues.
All right, sweet.
Yep, see you guys in a minute.
Wait, what do I do now? How do I stop?
Welcome back, Ward.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. I tend to be very upfront about things. So in general, if I seem like I'm like kind of a train wreck, I'm bipolar as fuck, and I've been cycling like super crazy lately. So I'm actually legitimately going off the rails. But yeah, I got no excuse. I can watch myself doing it, but I'm like, well, I don't know what to do about this.
Yeah, well, this is going to be an interesting observation for myself to see what I do.
Yeah. It's a wild. Like, I actually found like a forum online this week when I was like doing some reading about it, and it was a very validating experience because like all of these things that make me feel genuinely like fucking nuts, I was just reading about like hundreds of other people being like, yeah, I go through this thing, and I'm like, oh shit, that's so familiar. Wild.
Yeah, I don't have bipolar, but I have BPD and like a few other things. And like group therapy was a big one that helped me out, where I was like get over the stigma and being like, oh, like, yeah, just fucking this shit sucks. And then hearing other people's stories, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, like this is extremely validating for me.
I don't know why it never occurred, because I've known I was bipolar since I was fucking 16. So I don't know why it never occurred to me to like go online and like read what other people were experiencing until last week, some 20 something years later. But I did and was like, oh, holy shit. What I am going through is normal for a certain division of damaged people.
Oh, yeah. It makes you not feel so alone in it and dealing with it, too. You know, it doesn't feel like it's just happening to you, and it helps you realize, oh, shit, okay, I'm not alone in this. There are other people struggling with this. You know, maybe I don't have to keep this to myself.
It's like really specific experiences where because when you grow up, you only have one perception of the world, and it's your own. So it, to some extent, even when it obviously feels wrong and broken, you have nothing to gauge it against.
Yeah.
Like I went on a medication that was highly effective for about a number of years back, and like literally had to go into therapy that like a few weeks later and be like, is this just like how fucking regular ass people deal with life? This is so fucking easy. How the fuck was I on hard mode for 35 fucking years? And they were like, well, you know, there's no such thing as normal, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, shut the fuck up and just give me a real answer. Like, do normal people do A instead of B? And they're like, well, yes. Yes, in fact, what you were experiencing is normal human feelings. I'm like, that's fucking wild.
Yeah, for me, like when they're like, "Yeah, we're diagnosing you with major depression," I'm like, "Wait, so you're telling me not everybody just feels like shit all the fucking time? So like, it's like there's people that don't feel like this. Like, how do I do that? I want that."
I had a psychiatrist one time, like while I was on that medication, ask me something like, "Oh, have you been having any like suicidal thoughts?" And I'm like, listen, I'm going to be honest with you, but I need you to understand what I'm saying genuinely. Like, yes, of course I'm having those thoughts, but it's so much reduced from normal that this is good. This is like a passive thought instead of me like considering it on the daily. And they were like, okay, that's worrisome. And I'm like, it's not worrisome. It's fucking progress.
Yeah, no, that's incorrect. It's only worrisome if you have like plans. You know, like suicidal ideation is just one thing compared to like suicidal planning. Like then it's something that needs to be addressed.
I agree with you in general. For me specifically, like I get really bad and then I get hammered and then I wake up with loaded guns in my bed. So like I don't think that if it happens, there's going to be planning involved.
Yeah. Well, for most people, it's when it gets to the planning stage that it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, like in general, I do agree. This shit got so heavy. Mike, say something good about Stalin.
I mean, what is there bad to say about the guy? Like, shit, he beat the fucking Nazis.
That's what I needed to hear.
Nice.
Stalin is Papa, dude.
Yeah, we got real heavy while you were gone. Bring in your happy weed emotions right now.
I actually was just about to check the bill score and see how depressed and sad my family is going to be for the rest of the day. Or happy. I'm sure yet. Let me see.
No, I had an earnest moment where I was kind of being apologetic for the fact that every time you guys have encountered me, I've been kind of a train wreck. But I'm bipolar and I've been like cycling lately, and I'm basically just going off the rails and just whatever, you know.
You've been fine. I mean, I will say I definitely would not have conducted myself so appropriately on mushrooms. So applause to you.
I'm on mushrooms right now too. It's a pretty normal way of being for me.
Yeah.
But last week I definitely ate a lot more than I intended to.
But you were, well, I mean, I think the toe breaking moment, it's going to be like a semi-legendary moment for our podcast for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember if I think it was in our group chat or maybe I sent it to Connor. I was just like, fuck, man, we can't let this get out because now in the black book of communism, like me dislocating my toe counts for like 10 deaths.
Solzhenitsyn is like, he's like amped up in his grave. I'm infested with stink bugs. I don't know if you guys are familiar with these things. Have you seen them?
Yes, they're fucking terrible.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you saw me running around with I had my wife pick up a little handheld vacuum at the store yesterday. She's like picking up groceries. I'm like, just grab whatever little $30 vacuum you can get that has a tube attachment that looks like a stink bug will fit through that tube. She's like, I got you. She grabbed this thing. It's perfect. And we're using it solely for vacuuming up these bugs. And I will say, if you're going to get infested with a bug, hope that it's stink bugs because these are the dumbest fucking bugs in existence. They literally just buzz around and then bonk into shit. And then they just move slow. And like you just go right up to them with the vacuum and they just face their demise head on and just accept it. They just go right in the tube. They have no problem. Like
that I can be so brave one day.
I know. They're like the Che Guevara of bugs, like except without a cause. Like they have no goal. Like,
not that you know about.
Well, so far their goal seems to be to just walk around my house real slow on every surface. Like
See, that's capitalist thinking on your part that everything has to be for a goal. Like some of us exist just for the sheer joy of existence.
Where's the
misery of existence? But
I was riding the train the other day, and this I don't know, middle class bougie looking family in front of me was freaking out because there was roaches on the train, and they all stood up and were holding onto the rails on overhead, and I'm just like, I'm just going to keep sitting here, whatever, fuck it. I'll just sit in filth if I need to.
I ever start a story with, so I was riding the train the other day. It's probably a drug reference.
No, I was actually on public transit.
I'm just saying from my perspective. Dude, my cats love me so much right now.
They want the attention because they're on camera.
Well, I was like gone for a solid 3 hours today, so they are losing their minds.
No, Brian, that's how high I am. I literally thought you were making a joke and saying that the roaches themselves grabbed the overhead rails.
Oh, no, the white bougie family in front of me was freaked out because there were roaches on the train and they all stood up. I'm Like the roaches are not going to crawl up into your seat and like go in your pockets or whatever, you know?
Yeah, they're
like
not gonna
maybe
hang out with you.
Yeah. Like you might be sitting in hobo piss on the seat a little bit, but you know, just don't think about it.
Well, I've
What do
had
you use?
success with Firefox.
What do you use?
What am I using? Oh, Microsoft Edge.
Okay,
Why? What's up?
this just a terrible choice.
Yeah.
What? I mean, it just came with my computer. I haven't installed anything else. Like I could use I use DuckDuckGo on my phone actually.
Yeah, I use DuckDuckGo on my phone, but on computer I use Firefox. And then
Okay.
like I have a very like hardened version of Firefox where it's like no tracking, anything like that, but it causes a lot of websites to break. So if I go to a website and it doesn't work, then I open up a Brave browser.
Yeah, I think I need to try Brave. I think that's a better alternative to Chrome. I think it's based off of Chrome, but
Yeah, it's based off of Chrome, but it's more privacy oriented. Like if you're going for like best privacy out the box, Brave is the choice, but if you harden Firefox, it's way more secure.
yeah, I've got a bunch of those plugins that like block ads and block JavaScript and all that kind of stuff. It works pretty good on Firefox.
I've just accepted
I prefer my Firefox.
I've just accepted my surveillance. You know, anyone watching, listening, whatever, they know, whatever. I am never going to be good enough with cybersecurity to outsmart whoever wants to watch. So I go, you know, whatever. Here I am searching up, you know, Walter Reuther and the CIA misdeeds, you know.
Yeah, it's basically like just figuring out your own personal threat model where it's like, okay, what am I trying to do? It's like trying to hide from like the NSA. Like that's damn near impossible.
Dude,
But like at least not giving your information to like corporations like Google and like Facebook and other data collection services. Like you could do that.
it was 11 or 12 years ago when I found out about my FBI file. And at the time I had no social media and like I didn't even have a cell phone for a long time, like stuff like that. And I still had a fucking FBI file.
Did we talk about this? The FBI file thing? I know I feel like I've talked about this on someone's podcast. I just can't remember
Sterling?
where. Okay, so my thinking is, and let me know if I'm crazy. It's like because I know what you can do is you can request a copy of your FBI file, right?
Oh.
Like you fill out a form online. Apparently, it's like on the FBI website. You just fill out a form. You put in like your name and whatever your identifying info, and then they send you a copy, like a physical copy of everything that they have on you. But I feel like doing that is like, please compile a file on me if you have not already, and then
That's
send it
my
to me.
thinking too. I'm like, I don't want to ask.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like if they don't have one, they're making one now.
right. Because there's
Wait,
like
why
a
are
lead
you
time on it.
asking
You
us
gotta wait like
this?
a couple weeks. It's like,
So
Yeah.
funny enough, the reason I know I have an FBI file is because a friend of mine did that. I don't think it was as straightforward as you're making it sound, but he needed to find out if something he was going to do was going to like throw up some red flags or something. So he had a private investigator run a really thorough background check on him and got a copy of his FBI file. And it was my best friend. So and again, like I never figured out, like given the level of technology and surveillance that was like common knowledge at that time, I don't know how it was pieced together, but my FBI file was referenced in his FBI file.
Solid.
Hey, that's a good sign. You're doing it right.
Yeah, but that's like, I also kind of wonder if it almost doesn't matter anymore, not for like the reasons like where it's okay, but it's like if you have a file on 7 billion people, does the fact that there's a file matter? Because at that point, it's buried in a mountain of information.
Like the I'm Spartacus thing, like everybody's the guy you're looking for, so no one's the guy you're looking for.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that's a great way to look at it, but
I always thought it'd be cool if they were like crypto terrorists or whatever they would be in that situation. But like if they hackers or something, if they hacked social security records or identification records, and then rather than using them for a profit motive, like to steal people's identities and take money or take their retirements or whatever, if they just leaked everything or made it indecipherable, like to the point where like they were able to like spam the records with enough on everyone so that no one was a criminal, but also no one was like totally legal, like just make it not matter somehow, and like what that would do. I thought it would be a cool thing to probably write about. I guess you'd have to
Sort of like in Fight Club when they're trying to do with all the credit cards or something.
Yeah, something akin to that. Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see. While we're speaking, on FBI files and all that shit,
did we lose him?
Do we lose him?
Did things slow down for anyone else, or is it just me?
We thought you dropped.
We can't see you.
Mike, did you just see Sterling's tweet?
No, I'm trying to pull it up now.
I like it a lot.
What's today? The 3rd?
Yes.
Okay.
It's pretty good.
Free to share.
Okay. Yeah. So, did you guys hear about Grimes?
Yes.
Yeah, she's a communist now. It's wild.
Yeah. Well, she also had a thing saying like how it was a fucking, literally just a stunt, trolling stunt. Where's that at? Yeah, she posted it on like Instagram, some fucking dumb shit. Oh, yeah, she was like, I was really stressed when paparazzi wouldn't stop following me around this week. But then I realized it was an opportunity to troll. I swear this headline, oh my God, what the fuck? Haha, I'm dead. Full disclosure, I'm still living with Elon and I'm not a communist, although there are some very smart ideas in this book. But personally, I'm more interested in radical decentralized UBI that I think would potentially be achieved through crypto and gaming, but I haven't ironed those ideas out yet to explain. Regardless, my opinions on politics are difficult to describe because the political system that inspires me the most has not yet been implemented.
Wow. Just
tell me you're dumbass. Tell me you're dumbass. Yeah.
That was a sentence. Well, those were definitely words.
That's a sentence. Yeah.
Don't even know where to start on that. Jesus fucking Christ.
Implemented through crypto and
they're so incoherent.
Yeah, I want my politics shaped by gaming. Yes, please.
Yeah.
It's like
fucking,
you have not spent enough time in Call of Duty multiplayer. Like to think that gaming should be a crucial factor in forming politics, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an anarchist, but most of those guys straight to the gulag.
Right?
Not good people. I don't want them shaping anything.
I played Xbox Live once on a friend's thing, and it was upsetting to hear.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I consider myself an anarchist, or I try and follow those kinds of principles, is because I think about how often I'm quick to go to the fucking gulag with that. Oh, fuck that gulag. And I'm like, you know what? See? Maybe I shouldn't be making those decisions.
No, that means you're on the right track, dude. No, you're taking the wrong message from that, bud.
Yeah. We can all be a little gulag happy at times.
Embrace
the dictatorship of the proletariat is not the proletariat being super nice to capitalists.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not looking to be nice per se. While we were on the topic of FBI files and stuff, I do think it's worth mentioning, like Michael Parenti's kind of discussion about Walter Reuther. One of the things he mentioned about writing that article was that they had a bunch of FBI files and stuff on Walter Reuther. And this was like 26 years or something after his death. And he mentioned that there was a whole bunch of still super redacted stuff. And I feel like people probably smarter than myself are still asking for this kind of documentation. But I thought, like, I don't know, it's been another, I think, 26 years since then. I'm like, if we asked for that kind of documentation, we might actually be able to get a little bit more, perhaps with less redactions. So I don't know. I'm thinking about possibly trying to do like I don't know if it's necessarily a FOIA request or what, but and you know, I don't want this on the air because will probably not follow through with it, but
fair enough.
I mean,
I was gonna say, how hard is that to do? Like, is it just a document you fill out, or you got to like raise funds, or what? Like, it's
weird. There's a few different ways to do it. I think the easiest is to like write up your request in like a PDF kind of format, and like you ask for these certain things, whatever. And then you would send that to the FOIA officer for that agency. But there's a whole bunch of agencies that use like one interconnected online portal, which does not work on your phone. Fun fact. You have to do that from a laptop or something. So you can attach. I did my first FOIA request for the EPA. We'll see if I actually get anything on it, but I did learn how to do it through that. And so you do kind of just like fill out a pretty basic document that's like, hey, I'm asking for documents from XYZ. So like it might be emails or written documents, and like you try and get specific with like names, dates, and like what you want searched. And then you kind of put in, there's some templates you can find with some of the legal mumbo jumbo that you're just like, oh, and you can't withhold documents for XYZ reason. If there's a concern of privacy or whatever, you can redact documents instead of not sharing the documents as a whole. Language like that. And then you kind of just explain why you think it's in the public interest to have that information out. So it's worth learning how to do. It's interesting. So I may do some more FOIA kind of stuff. Not that I'm not a journalist or anything though. So I'm kind of just some like random idiot asking for stuff. So
no, man,
you could use the podcast as an excuse. It would make for good material.
I mean, that's what I do. I put for Cars and Comrades podcast. I'm like, I am part of the media. So
yeah, you're on a watch list.
You say like I'm not a journalist, but bear in mind that like you're already doing more research on this than like actual quote unquote journalists have done. So like I understand what you're saying, but give yourself some fucking credit too, because you're doing some legwork.
I mean, not that much legwork, but like a little bit. So anyway, I may do some kind of request or whatever to get documentation for Walter Reuther's death, because I don't know, Michael Parenti tried to get it 26 years ago and they got something, just it wasn't it was a lot more redacted. So who knows, it's been another 26 years. I don't know, maybe they'll give us less redacted shit. And I'm just some nobody, so they might be more willing to give me stuff. I don't know. So who knows? But they did reference it, and it got me thinking. I was like, I should do a request on that.
Yeah,
we'll see.
There's like a fee that goes with it. It can usually be like up to a few $100s.
Yeah, it depends on what you're asking for. They'll usually come back to you and say like, hey, it's going to cost you this much or whatever. And from there, you can kind of like, you can work it out a little bit. So you can ask for a fee waiver, which is kind of hard to get if you're not like the New York Times or some shit, like, which I am not. But
because he's doing actual journalism.
Yeah, those motherfuckers should definitely have to pay a fee.
You would think. But a lot of it, like, it'll depend. So like they'll come back and be like, oh, hey, printing all this stuff will cost, $200 and everything. And you just be like, oh, you can send that electronically. I don't need shit printed. And they might be like, oh, well, okay, it'll cost $35 or something. Usually the fees are pretty like, they're between like $20 to $50. It's not supposed to be bad, but it can be really expensive. It depends on a lot of different things. So sometimes they're going to fuck with you with that, and sometimes they won't. If you can be clever about what you're asking for and why, you might not come off as adversarial. And I mean, not that that's supposed to make a difference, but like it makes a difference. So like from my request from the EPA is largely on the side of the EPA. So I'm looking for information that is like, hopefully, pro EPA. So like there's a good chance I'll get it because without too much fucking around, but we'll see. But it's worth learning how to do. I've got to, and we haven't talked about it on our podcast yet, but I've got to start like, I got to look into doing FOIA requests for like Pete Buttigieg and stuff. Cause like he's the Secretary of Transportation and shit. I'm like very much in our purview. I should FOIA some stuff from him. I just don't know what to ask for yet. So if y'all think of anything, let me know. I will.
FOIA Tom Cotton's military records.
What?
Senator Tom Cotton. FOIA his military records.
That's not a bad idea. Why not?
I remember that one picture with him where he's like posed up in like a pile of seized gold from Afghanistan.
Oh, gross.
Wow.
I didn't. Yeah.
I didn't know about
I
that.
just love the idea of a bunch of like shit posting leftist podcasters figuring out how to do FOIA requests and just getting fucked up and doing FOIA requests for shits and giggles.
Yeah.
Like, I legitimately love this fucking idea.
There's a bunch of mistyped fucking FOIA requests, all half drunk.
Yes, I love it. Maybe at some point I'll tell you guys all how to do it, or like where you can go get references for like what to pay attention to and like what the requirements are. I'll send you some videos or something. It's worth learning how to do.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, well, I am good to go. I hope y'all are too. I'm almost done with my first beer, and I've got my second beer set up here in my insulated lunchbox with cold pack and everything. I'm ready to go. So
I'm on my third since we've started.
Nice.
I'm not going to talk about the ones I had before in preparation for the podcast.
Got the
I'm always torn between whether I should try and drink more or less. I'm trying to go with a little bit less this time, just because I'm trying to like read and like remember stuff. Which,
Oh shit!
Which apparently
got
doesn't
to him.
matter because he gets cut off.
The feds got to him.
Yeah. Oh, so here's how you do a FOIA request.
God, those communists are amazing.
Welcome back to the Turn Leftist podcast. I'm Mike, he, him, and tonight I'm here with Ward, he, him as well, and our special guest tonight from the Cars and Comrades podcast. We have Connor, Bryant, Brandon, and Zach. All he, him pronouns as well. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Wow.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real sausage here again tonight. All he, hims.
Yeah, that's true.
No, but so I wanted to ask you, Connor, did you get through all of the things that you had set aside for part one last week, or were we still kind of in part one territory?
So we're kind of shifting here. So it did take a while to get through, which is fine. I think we were setting the scene on the last episode, kind of talking about the early life of Walter and obviously Victor as well. Part one, I kind of had set through World War II, but I think it makes sense. This episode, I'd like to keep in that pre-World War II period and talk about some of the major strikes and organizing tactics used by the UAW and Walter and Victor, and some of the political maneuvering within the union and the labor movement overall.
Mm-hmm.
So this will kind of be like a part two, and then I think there's probably going to be a part three, the post World War II period. So I'm hoping you guys are okay with that. But
I got nothing but time. We can make as many parts as we want. I think we'll probably get through more tonight because I'm not as drunk as I was last week. Last week I kept stopping everything for random rants about whatever. I don't even remember now. I still have to get back to the playback to listen to what I interrupted for so many goddamn times. But
I really enjoyed it, actually.
I mean, I had a great time.
It was good.
But it just wasn't like the most productive, information-heavy episode because we just kept going off on tangents. Not that that's a problem. It's a podcast.
I was on fucking mushroom, so you drinking is fine with me. I'm currently on mushroom.
I think we were all just having a good time last week. And so, hey, we have a very tangent heavy podcast. So yeah, we got information we plan to get through, but then there's a tangent and then another and then another. Yeah. And it's like the inception of tangents. It's like, well, we're 4 tangents deep, tangents within tangents.
Dude, if we got 15 minutes worth of information, that's good for an hour and a half long episode.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I think you're listening to the podcast for the analysis, not so much the detailed facts, which is why we're going to include the sources so that if you want that, you can get the kind of that unvarnished story, which is going to be way less in depth than kind of what we've got, but it'll give you a good idea of what we're talking about.
Way more in depth, you mean?
Well, I'm going pretty. So I'm referencing a bunch of documentaries and podcasts, but like I've tried to put them all kind of together. So like any one of them on their own is going to be severely lacking.
Oh, I got you. Okay, cool.
In a lot of that info. And that's the way it is. It's so you're not going to get like that perfect linear, hey, this date this happened, that date that happened, hey, look at this, isn't this cool? It's cool to see like the video from like the early 30s of all these strikes and stuff. Like they have video and you can hear from the people who were there, which I think is incredibly valuable. And they're not going to sit there and pontificate on it like we are for quite as long. But so one of the main documentaries we use, Brothers on the Line, it's good. I think it gets a lot of information out there in a very short period of time. But after, when I watched it again and I found myself pausing it every 2 or 3 minutes to be, as I'm watching it with my partner, and I'd have to pause it and I'd be like, oh, this is the part where they skip over all of this information. Here's the part where they totally miss all of this. And it's like, it's a good, quick and dirty kind of documentary, but there is a lot of detail that they don't include.
It's definitely looking at Walter Reuther through rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was made, one of the producers or directors or someone was someone in the Reuther family, right? I forget what their name was.
Yeah, they were very much involved. Like Victor was heavily involved with it and all that. So, there was some rose-colored glasses. They also did kind of go through some of the criticism, but like
they did have a former drum member on there.
They did. Right. It was General Baker. So
I didn't even pay attention to the name. Okay, fuck, that's cool.
Yep. So I was like, oh shit, all right, there he is. So so they did include some of that, but like it was a very small chunk. We'll get a little bit more into that, like part 3. So.
And they also they had some footage in there from the drum movie. What was it called? Have you heard the news or something? Finally got in the news, I think.
I can never remember the name of that movie, but it's something like that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm sure we'll get to that. I don't know if that'll be in part 3, but when we get to drum and all that, that's a really interesting movie. I would recommend it, and I believe it's free on Vimeo or something.
Go back to our drum episode if you want to learn the actual name of that movie, because I'm sure we say it there.
Yeah. All right. Well, then, last week was kind of setting the scene. I will do a brief recap, and then we'll kind of get right back into it, starting with how everything was created, and then the actual organizing and strikes at the Big 3.
Finally got the news, that documentary.
Yep, there it is. So we talked last week about kind of the beginning of the story and setting the scene for how shitty labor was back in the early 20th century. So back when most industrial workers did not have union representation, we learned that shit was bad. You didn't just get like yelled at by a boss, like you might get beat up by several thugs. So like if you weren't working fast enough, they would just beat your ass, because that was somehow acceptable before we had unions. Cool. It's just capitalism in its most raw form.
Super cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the world that all the libertarians and the extreme right wingers are trying to bring us back to, is like where your boss can hire thugs and come to beat you up if you're not working fast enough, or if you talk about unions or anything like that.
Sounds like you should just get a better job, bro.
Yeah, of course.
Get a better job at a place that doesn't beat people as often.
Yeah.
It's on you, bro. It's a you problem.
Exactly. And, at the time that was normal, and workers did not have paid time off or any healthcare benefits. Like they didn't give a fuck. There was none of that. So like at the time we'd, I think, already won the 8-hour day, the 40-hour work week. We kind of had weekends sort of by this time, but like that didn't really factor in for most people because these factories were still, they could just ignore it. There was no real agreement, and they were the only game in town a lot of times. So that
to point out how true that still is, as I long for the 8-hour workday.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, even in a small sense, we don't have 9 to 5s anymore. Everything's an 8 to 5. And that's just because the capitalists stole your 1-hour lunch.
Yeah.
They just took that from you. So, they will always try and claw it all back. So whatever gains we win, we've always got to be fighting. And of course, that's why we hope for revolution rather than reform. Or that's one of the reasons, at least, because we know they'll try and take every last bit of it back. Something you see is like, oh, of course, it's a good thing that we don't have children working anymore.
Right.
Not to the rich. They are not happy about that still to this day. They don't view that as good.
Yeah.
Every time I start softening on any of my more like radical insurrectionary views, I just read 3 pages of labor history and I'm like, nope, burn it all down.
Yeah.
And how many fast food places have signs out front that say now hiring 14 and 15-year-olds?
Yeah.
Right.
More than I'm comfortable with.
At reduced pay, of course. If you're 14, you get $8 an hour. If you're 15, you get 9. If you're, an adult, you'll get 10 because that's the way that it is now.
Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah, we totally got away with child labor. We don't do that anymore.
All right, now, anybody want to put bets on how long we start seeing now accepting 14 and 15-year-olds like those signs in front of the military recruitment offices?
I don't think it's that far away, especially whenever they added women to the draft.
Did they actually do that? That happened?
Yes.
Wow.
Yikes.
Modern world, we got rid of child like slavery and like child soldiers and stuff by redefining what constitutes a child.
I'm just thinking of that scene in the end of Starship Troopers where there's a little kid saying, "I'm doing my part." Yeah.
Would you like to know more?
I mean, even if they're not in the military, we still have, JROTC programs and all of those that are basically just military indoctrination for youth until they can be enlisted.
Yeah, totally normal. But if that was happening in another country, it's so dystopian and authoritarian.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good old American exceptionalism.
People would be fine with them tomorrow operating the drones. Like if they were like using Call of Duty controllers, they would be fine with like 14, 15-year-old kids doing that tomorrow.
Dude, they swapped Xbox controllers a long time ago for drone operators.
Mm.
They couldn't train drone pilots on like the actual hardware, so they fucking like implemented a revision kind of thing where they could hook up a fucking Xbox controller to the system because all the young recruits couldn't operate the actual system, but they could operate a fucking Xbox 360 controller, no problem.
Right.
It sounds like the cornerstone of Grimes' political economy.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
Maybe she's got something, maybe.
I mean, that's also basically the plot of that movie Toys, the Robin Williams movie from the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't know that they were doing drone strikes in that movie.
Yeah, I mean, spoiler alert, but the twist at the end is that they have all these children like basically playing video games, but they're murdering civilians in Afghanistan or something.
Also,
Ender's Game.
Yeah, I was about to say Ender's
basically
Game
the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Robin Williams has been a long time advocate for drone strikes. I don't know if you knew that. But...
Not so much lately. Not since 2014.
Yeah, no.
Jeez.
Fuck.
Too soon? Sorry. No, I actually missed the guy terribly. I miss his movies and his comedy even. But yeah, man, get over it.
I'm sorry I spoke out against Robin Williams like that.
All right.
Well, as long as it's not Papa Stalin, we're fine.
All right. So anyway, back to labor history.
What did he say? I missed it. Shit.
Dude, we just get so derailed.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, we know kind of just labor was weak at the time. Shit was bad for workers. The union kind of cropped up to protect workers, and some of the union organizers wanted to have a broader vision of, leading to revolution, and some did not. So there was, obviously we have, typical socialists at the time, and then there's communists as well, all organizing in these unions, and there's power struggles and this and that. But back in the days, things were bad for workers. And so there was kind of just a natural need for workers to band together and improve their situation.
This is also like the peak era for like CP USA too, before they became like weird and revisionist and reformist.
Mm.
Yeah. And they come up in our story a little bit, kind of tangentially, but like the Communist Party of the USA did have a lot to do with the labor movement, and the communists that were organizing largely with the CIO unions. So I did just want to quickly kind of reiterate the sorts of questions that I mentioned in the last episode of like what I'm trying to consider, because hopefully the next labor leaders are listening to this episode at some point. And I think there are things to learn from this story, and it's, there's a lot to it. It's pretty multifaceted. So again, I'm not making any hard answers on this, but I think it's important to just like think about while we engage with the material. So just kind of things to think about are just How did union power rise in the first place, and then how did it later fall? And what can we learn from the strategy pursued by Walter Reuther or his opposition within the labor movement, which would be more the communists? How should we think about the dynamic between getting power within the capitalist system and build movements outside the centers of power? How should we think about making compromises and giving concessions in order to get gains for working people? How should we think about political education for union membership? Is it better to have those large unions or more radical members? What alternatives might exist to the kind of political engagement we saw from unions in the 20th century? How should we think about the very small pivotal moments throughout history that shaped the world as we know it? Kind of examples for that are like the fact that the Batista regime in Cuba did not, kill Fidel Castro on multiple occasions when they could have. That's like a small decision that really impacted the world.
Batista, you fucked up.
Well, exactly. And so there's a few moments like that in this story when it comes to the companies that they are organizing against. There's cases where the right person happens to be in the right position of power to give a win to a union. This kind of stuff is something we have to think about realistically, because a lot of the labor movement in the US is defined by luck. Unfortunately, how should we think about the very real pressures placed on unions by the global capitalist system, since we know capital can move and workers cannot, and that there is competition between different companies, whether they're union or not? How should we consider these different pressures and how they might affect how unions should or could organize? And then, of course, lastly, how should we think about legality in future labor struggles? If the game is rigged by ruling class and lawmakers, can anything really be gained by playing by their rules? What alternatives might exist? And how should we think about abandoning legality should we choose to do that in any sense? So sorry to sound pedantic, but I do want to just list these kinds of things up because they were things that I thought about while going through this story.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
That's fine. I already forgot about half of them.
Yeah, that's fine. Rewind if you need to hear them again, but probably not. So
unfortunately, I can't rewind. We're doing this live.
Well, yeah, you can't, but listeners can. So
okay, maybe I shouldn't drink so much on the podcast.
Nah, it's all good.
Yeah, you and me both. So we kind of get that Walter Reuther comes from a socialist family around the turn of the century. His father was a socialist, and he taught Walter, Victor, and Roy, and Ted, and all the Reuther kids learned from their socialist father. So pretty early on, they were at least socialists. They were not communists, although Walter and Victor did spend some time in Soviet Russia, teaching workers in Russia to make retired Ford models after Henry Ford sold all that equipment to Russia. So, of course, they spent their time traveling Asia and whatnot, like we talked about, and they did spend some time in Soviet Russia, where Walter did make a point of criticizing the inefficiencies he saw in the plants. So he was pretty anti-communist even when he was in Soviet Russia. He was anti-communist when he came back. He was anti-communist later after the Taft-Hartley Act. Walter Reuther was very anti-communist.
Lame.
Yeah. So here's something. I wonder, I never actually knew the thing before this about about Ford selling all of the equipment and machinery to Russia. Do you think that if Henry Ford had known that they would use it to defeat the Nazis single-handedly, that he would have reconsidered selling it to them?
Yeah, he would not have sold that shit.
Shout out to Henry Ford for helping us defeat the Nazis.
Critical support for Henry Ford.
I mean, he was giving with one hand and taking away with the other.
Yeah, I think it was Lenin, right, who said the capitalists will sell us the rope with which we hang them, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Was it?
Yeah, the last capitalist we hang will be the one who sold us the rope.
Yep, that's it. That's the quote. So yeah, again, I think we talked about it last week, but Walter and Victor did. After Walter was fired from Ford for, I think he was organizing on a campaign for the Socialist Party of America. So their presidential campaign, they put up whoever, and Walter was organizing rallies for him, and that got him fired. So then he and Victor took the opportunity to travel through Europe and Asia on bike. And, they did that. They spent 2 years in Russia, where they were hired to teach workers in Russia how to operate the machinery to make the Model T that Henry Ford had sold them. So they came back to the States, I think it was 1932. And that's really where it was after that time that they really started organizing with the UAW, which was fledgling at the time. So kind of here's how the UAW gets created. Basically, the UAW was created in 1935 as part of the American Federation of Labor, so the AFL. The first president was Francis J. Dillon, and he was president from 1935 to 1936. The union vice president at the time was Homer Martin. He'll become important later. And after the initial AFL-CIO split, the socialist Homer Martin was elected to be the second president of the UAW in 1936, and he was president until 1938. I think I've got somewhere in here, which let me check my notes. Yeah, so here's we went through it last week, but just to recap, at the AFL convention in 1935, John L. Lewis, who was the leader of the United Mine Workers at the time, created the committee for industrial organization within the AFL. So the first CIO was like a group within the AFL, which the AFL did not appreciate, and they expelled those unions who were with John Lewis the next year. So that's where we get our first president of the UAW is with the AFL, right? Then after the split, his vice president, Homer Martin, is then elected to be president, and that's the UAW CIO, right? So there was that split, but it was initially created when John L. Lewis kind of created that organization within the AFL. So that's split number one, but don't worry, there'll be a reconciliation between the two later.
Boo.
Yeah, boo.
I didn't do any in-depth reading on Homer Martin and about Walter Reuther's very specific political beliefs. So we know that they were both socialists. Do we know anything about their actual theoretical stances on things, or were they just general big picture socialists?
So I can answer that. Walter and Victor Reuther were socialists. All right. That's what they called themselves. In a lot of ways, especially later on, they would become more like social democrats or democratic socialists, wherever you want to draw that fucking line. I don't care. They were more in that vein later on, especially. Earlier on, it seems as though they were maybe more quote unquote radical, but I don't think they were ever really pro workers' revolution, and being anti-communist as they were not looking at that model. Communism wasn't their end goal, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
that's sad.
It's something I almost don't understand.
They just wanted to rein it in a little bit.
Seemingly, yes. Now, at the time, they were called socialists. Back in the day when people didn't have the same kind of access to information that we have now, now we can have, oh God, I can't even make fun of it, but you know what I'm talking about, where there's 8, here's my 8 labels or whatever. I'm a, anti-revisionist, anarcho-mutualist, whatever the fuck,
Anarcho-Biden, man.
Yeah. That wasn't quite as prevalent at the time because it really was just workers wanting worker power. Mm-hmm. There was revolutionary types. There was not revolutionary types. There was plenty of literature out there, but a lot of people were pretty broad. And I think in a lot of ways, the more revolutionary folks were focused on organizing regular working people. And sometimes that meant meeting them where they're at, which, is a thing we do today. We see that all the time. So it's very normal, but they were considered socialists. Homer Martin was considered a socialist, although he was opposed. Him and Walter were on different sides of many fights. So part of that was because Homer Martin was an interesting character, which we'll get into a little bit more later. But yeah, Walter and Victor were very anti-communist, and at times they fall for these ridiculous tropes of communists. There's points at which Walter will describe an instance, but when we get to it, I will tell you, this did not happen. So he recounts this situation at a convention where, blah, 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 this happened. It's no, that didn't happen. 100% did not happen. Yeah. I am perfectly happy saying that, despite, I don't have evidence that it didn't happen, but when I read it, you'll know. You'll be yeah, that didn't fucking happen. So he was trying to rein in the system, like you said, and he was a little bit more conservative in that respect. So it's kind of hard to put exactly pin where his ideology was, but he, general socialist, anti-communist, somewhere in that vein, basically.
I don't follow that ideology at all. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't an anarchist. He wasn't a communist. He was something in between.
Just be a communist. They're going to call you a communist anyway, so just be one.
Big facts.
Yeah.
Which Mike, you're not paying attention. He went to Russia and he didn't like it, so communism's bad.
Irrefutable.
He got cold. He got
I
cold one time.
personally didn't like it, so it doesn't work.
Yeah.
He personally blames communism for Siberia being cold.
Yeah, which we discussed being probably a little bit embellished. Yeah. So that's, and I think it was in the interview, which again, we'll probably link, with Michael Parenti and David Emery, where David Emery points out that, hey, you can criticize communism or communist movements, and it will not get you any love from anyone who thinks you're reasonable. They're still going to fucking hate you. And that's the truth. Be a communist, because separating yourself from it at times is like, oh, well, I don't want that. It's like, well, they fucking hate you anyway. They hate Bernie Sanders. They call Joe Biden a fucking Marxist. Wait, What is the point? Wait, you cannot appease those fucking people. So, stop being scared and actually look into the history. Be unafraid when you're looking at political ideologies, because they're calling you a communist either way.
Yeah.
But of course,
seen Joe Biden's entry in Conservapedia?
I bet it's a good one.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Political beliefs: socialism with Chinese characteristics, communism, Xi Jinping thought, Marxism, fascism, white supremacy.
Aside from the fascism and white supremacism, based as fuck.
If only it was true, though.
Yeah.
That's the Joe Biden. Well, I was going to say that's the Joe Biden I'd vote for, but yeah, the fascism on white supremacy really threw me off the trail. But
yeah, do better, Joe.
Well, again, we're talking about people who don't know what any of those fucking terms mean at all. So,
Yeah.
If only liberals were as cool as conservatives thought they were.
Right.
100%. 100%.
By the way, the Conservapedia entry for E equals MC squared is hilarious.
oh my
shit, I
god,
gotta pull that up.
I'll let you all read that at your own time, but it's pretty insane.
I can't. Why would that even be on there? That's not.
I don't know, because
my son was a socialist, so obviously it has
that's
to be
right.
fake news.
and,
Equals MC squared is fake news.
Jewish too.
Yep.
I mean, they don't go out and say that, but there's a few dog whistles in there.
I like how after the intro, the first thing is description for the layman.
Yeah.
So listen while we tell you some bullshit. They reference Twilight. Oh God, Twilight Zone. Fuck off.
No.
All right, I'm closing this.
That's from the E equals MC squared Conservapedia.
Yeah.
Oh my god. All right, yeah, listeners, go check. Pause this episode. Go check that out real quick, and then come back to us. Wow.
Oh, it's the best shit I've seen.
I do like the Joseph Biden one, because it's like he began occupying the White House, That's like the first line.
Dude, Occupy White House would have been so much cooler than Occupy Wall Street.
Oh yeah.
All right, so anyway, back to kind of the early beginnings of the UAW and the CIO. The third president of the UAW was a man named R.J. Thomas. His full name was Roland J. as in J-A-Y, Thomas. And he was elected after Homer Martin was, and I put this in quotes, ousted. That will become important. Apparently, Homer kind of went off the rails a little bit, and UAW workers tell stories of how near the end he'd be in the union hall where people are trying to eat their lunch and shit, and he's walking on the fucking tables preaching the gospel. For reference, he was a former preacher. He was a socialist preacher who got involved in the labor movement. And so he would just he was walking on tables, bothering people with the gospel. And he was apparently, by all accounts, super paranoid about fucking everything. And take it with a grain of salt, because it is coming from Walter, but Walter did allege that Homer had showed him at least once a briefcase with $50,000 in cash in it, which he believed came from either the mob or perhaps Harry Bennett, which we have not introduced in depth yet. But Harry Bennett was Henry Ford's most beloved thug.
This motherfucker.
And yeah, he was a real piece of shit. Like, wow, incredible. So for Homer to potentially be taking any kind of money from Harry Bennett is like literally the worst thing. That is just 100%. That is the biggest betrayal of the workers that is imaginable. Like nothing Walter ever did could compare to that. So we don't know exactly where this money came from. It's a very small part of the story, but Homer Martin definitely went off the rails and definitely was like not doing the union any favors. So he was not president for very long. But yeah, he did some shit, and he does some shit again later after being ousted as well. So more to come. The U.S. labor history is marred in leftist infighting, just everywhere. It's constant. And this story is going to involve quite a bit. And this is one of those cases. So anyway, R.J. Thomas was elected after Homer Martin was, elected out. And he served as president from 1938 to 1946. During this period, the UAW developed into a dynamic and stable union. He lost the presidency by a handful of votes to Walter Reuther in 1946, but he was elected the first vice president under Walter. Within the UAW, Thomas had led a CPUSA affiliated faction that supported the Soviet Union, while Reuther led a liberal and progressive faction that opposed the Soviet Union. So it's a bit of a split within the UAW at that time. We'll get more into it later, but these are kind of the two sides. There's like a progressive and a communist side, and R.J. Thomas, the third president, was leading the communists. During the World War II and until 1946 in the UAW, the communists had outnumbered the liberals in the executive committee. So, but nice. So they had pretty tremendous power in the UAW at this time, and arguably the UAW was doing great at this time.
I was going to say, I'm going to guess that's when they made their most gains and made the most progress and everything.
Yes, it's seemingly. Now, again, we're here to kind of criticize Walter a little bit, but Walter did do some very good shit too, and he was not a fucking idiot. So he did care about working people quite a bit, and he did come up with some really good actual on the ground strategies. But at this time, the UAW was doing very, very well. And a lot of that is like R.J. Thomas was the president, but the UAW was doing very well, in part in Detroit, almost entirely because of Walter and Victor Reuther and their strategies for organizing at this time. Nice. So anyway, at this time, the communists outnumbered the liberals in the executive committee, but by 1947, as U.S. and Soviet tensions grew, workers' support of the communists waned a little bit. And this is kind of important to keep in mind. A series of bitter internal disputes led to Thomas losing the office of the vice presidency in the following year's election, with most of the leading communists replaced in what became known as the biggest setback of all time for communists in the American labor movement. So this was a loss. Part of it was, of course, from growing Soviet tensions and the U.S. propaganda machine. And this is to their credit. I mean, this was before that propaganda machine had really been sophisticated. It wasn't until after World War II where they really had to contend with something that was more like what we see today. So that was a new challenge at the time. It's a challenge we still have today, obviously. But of course, with social media and stuff, we're kind of seeing that break through a little bit. And I think we have to kind of take lessons from this and learn, how do we go forward? How do we avoid that propaganda machine? How do we kind of combat that kind of stuff? Because we're seeing it happen today with like China quite a bit. So again, these are those lessons we kind of have to be thinking about. So let's get into the kind of what I'm calling the rise of the UAW before World War II. And so this is where kind of things really start to pop off. This is where that organizing actually comes into play. And here's the kind of strategies pursued by Walter and Victor, who, again, by no accounts were they dumb in their organizing. They were some of the best. So on March 7th, 1932, there was a march on the River Rouge Ford plant. Okay, so this is really the first of the big three, which are Ford, GM, and Chrysler. This march was against the largest plant, I think, at the time in Detroit, and it was Dearborn, Michigan, but that's right by Detroit. And it was situated on the, I think, whatever, the Rouge River or whatever. That's why the plant was named that. It was on that river. It is what it is. For this, I think it's important now, before we get too into this particular strike, we're going to introduce kind of our, I can't remember if this is our first or our second villain, but this is one of the main villains in this entire story, and that is Henry Bennett. So let's talk about Harry Bennett.
Yeah.
I'm stupid.
Man, he's not worthwhile getting his name right. Fuck him.
Yeah, fuck this guy, for real.
I'm
Fuck
not
this guy.
super acquainted with this guy, so I'm gonna learn something.
Oh, yes, you will. Now, I can say that Harry Bennett was a real piece of shit, but he was also a very interesting piece of shit. This guy was fucking bonkers. Like, I'm going through the story, I'm like, yo, how much of this is true? Come on. Really? Fucking tigers and lions? What?
Yeah.
Why are tigers and lions in this story? That's fucking crazy. But they are in this story.
I forget if it was him or Henry Ford in one of their mansions had a like a little special house built for ducks to hang out.
Oh, yeah, that was Harry Bennett.
Yeah.
Harry Bennett had a special little house built for ducks on his property. So,
Cool guy.
yes.
Like a fucking Peabody Hotel?
Very normal.
Yeah.
Like the fucking gall of oppressing workers so that you have money to build a fucking house on your property for ducks.
What, bro? It's my
Yeah.
duck house. Don't be jealous. Just work harder.
Yeah.
You know their
I
job,
think
guy.
also he would do target practice in his office.
Okay, come on, you're taking up you're taking up all the
Sorry.
story bits here, but yes, all true. Yes, all of
That
it.
last part was actually pretty sick, and I support that.
Yeah, I wish I could shoot my gun in my office. That'd be sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, but your job was not specifically to intimidate workers, and Harry's job was exactly that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it takes a darker turn then.
Yeah, it like sounded cool at first, but
Yeah.
fuck.
They're capitalists. It's never cool. It's just never
Yeah.
cool. So, Harry Herbert Bennett was born January 17th, 1892, and he lived to January 4th, 1979. He was a boxer, a Navy sailor, and a businessman. I mean, he was. From the 1920s through 1945, he worked for Ford Motor Company and was best known as the head of Ford's quote-unquote service department, which...
Christ.
Yeah, the service department, which has a perfectly nice sounding name, was actually Harry Bennett and his thugs working directly for Henry Ford, and their job was, 1, stop any unionization talk, 2, to beat the shit out of workers who did not work fast enough, and I mean, yeah, that's it. That's their 2 points in their mission statement was stop unions, beat workers.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what does the service department do? Oh, they service us with ass whippings.
Yeah. And this is where the stories come from, like workers who would say, like, literally they would, 1, choose not to use the bathroom when they had to, because Ford service department employees would watch them and like make sure they're not taking too long. And if they had to do a number 2, and the Ford service department guys decided that it was taking too long, they would literally go in, pull them off the toilet, and put them back to work. That happened.
Nice.
That,
Jesus.
again, want to remind people, this is the world that libertarians, this is what they're selling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, coming soon to a Amazon center near you.
Amazon Center or Amazon Town?
Yeah.
Capitalist innovation is re-implementing 100-year-old ideas.
100%. 100%. That's all it is. Told you, they're just trying to claw back every gain that workers have made. So he was head of Ford's service department, the company's internal security agency. He gained tremendous trust from Ford as the family bodyguard as well. So this is kind of where he got very, very close to Henry Ford himself. And the two were like inseparable.
They were bros.
Yeah. And they arguably had a potentially closer relationship than Ford had to his own son, Edsel Ford. Yeah, which
sounds pretty capitalist.
100%. So kidnapping was always a major concern for the wealthy in those days, which, was kind of true.
Yeah.
What?
That sounds fun.
That fucking rules. I said, let's bring that back.
Yeah. For the sake of anyone listening, that was parody and satire.
Project modernity, embrace tradition.
I can totally see myself taking that up as a hobby.
Kidnapping as a hobby.
Maybe like a vocation. Okay, it's a little more serious than a hobby.
Like, you make money doing it, but it's one of those situations where it's like, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
but I'm not doing it for a profit incentive. Like, I'm not going to be asking for ransom.
You're just like trying to get rid of
some debunked.
Okay, I misunderstood what your end goal was there. Okay, so like you're just like keeping them in the basement, or is this an execution scenario? What are we doing here?
I'll figure that out after I take them.
All right, I like your attitude.
Anyway, okay, so kidnapping was obviously a major concern. Harry was responsible for protecting the Ford family. There was at least one kidnapping attempt on Edsel Ford, which was Henry Ford's son, which was foiled by Harry. Several of the alleged kidnappers were mysteriously never heard from again. I think it was 4. So it was like 9 people involved. 5 of them went to the police. 4 of them they never heard from again. So they're dead, pretty sure. They were killed.
Well, this was like 100 years ago, so they're probably dead.
Well, yes. Yeah. Thank you, Brandon, for the clarification. While working
they
for
committed suicide, they shot themselves in the back of the head twice.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. Yeah. Yep.
Gary Webb vibes.
Yeah, I was gonna be like, nah, I'm not gonna make that joke. While working for Henry Ford, Bennett's union-busting tactics made him an enemy of the United Auto Workers trade union, obviously. He gained infamy for his involvement in activities such as the Battle of the Overpass, a 1937 incident that we'll talk about later, so don't worry about it. Harry Bennett got the job working for Ford after a street fight in 1916. So Harry was only 5'6", but he was a boxer in very good shape. He was spared from jail by a newspaper columnist and acquaintance of Henry Ford, who witnessed the fight and told police Harry wasn't at fault. At the time, the columnist was on his way to meet Ford and took Harry with him to introduce them. Ford had asked Harry if he could shoot, and Harry answered yes. That was apparently a job interview, and Harry got the job in security. So let's think about what that job interview was and like how fucked up. Yeah, that's... Can you shoot? That's it. So
you just got into a street fight and got away with it.
Like, hey, Henry, I found this guy. He just beat up this dude. I think he'd be great for you.
Yeah.
Can you shoot at workers? Okay, cool. Yeah, you're hired.
Well, and of course, I think it's noteworthy that, this is like some media fucking asshole who's just like friends with the richest man in the world at the time. And it's like, I wonder if his opinions were fucking worthwhile to have in that newspaper.
Yeah,
probably not. So that got him the job. And he was close with Henry ever since. He had various residences in Michigan, including the Great Lakes Landmark and Ford Motor Company built Pagoda House, the Asian themed boathouse on Grosse Isle. I think that's how you say it, Michigan, and Bennett's Lodge near Farwell, a log cabin style house in East Tawas, and Bennett's Castle. And Bennett's Castle was an estate located on the Huron River in Ypsilanti, where he kept pet lions and tigers. It had 22 rooms and was outfitted with secret passages and hidden rooms, including a hidden bathhouse. So this was like a real life Scooby-Doo mansion, basically. So like there's secret passages. There's, I'm pretty sure it's got like the fireplace that turns.
And it was owned by a real life ghoul.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was insane shit. Like this was all built specifically for Harry. And like one of the things that it had was like the stairs. I think it was like in the back or something, but like the stairs were built in such a way that they were like slightly different heights. So like they weren't a consistent height.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And this is just like to prevent people from, if they're pursuing him or something, like they would not be prepared for that and they might trip and fall. Again, Scooby-Doo level shit. I mean, it's like It's like if the Home Alone kid made a fucking mansion, that's where this guy lived.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was actually like a old timey medieval castle technique as well,
Yeah.
like defense from invaders.
Hmm.
But this sounds like Scooby Doo Home Alone meets like Winchester House mansion.
Yep. Yeah.
setup.
And so like it's got all of that. It's also got, it's patrolled by like a bunch of board security people. It's patrolled by lions, I think. Yeah, it was lions in the secret passages and stuff. Yeah. And sometimes he would just like let the lions out of their cages to roam the passages in case someone decides to come by at the wrong time.
That's the
And
first
just-
mistake. You got to use tigers. Lions are no good. Tigers work.
I think he had tigers too. I can't remember specifically, but he had big cats, we'll say.
This asshole probably had ligers.
Probably.
I'm just really upset that he didn't complete it and have bears.
I mean, that would be the Michigan type animal to have.
Lions and tigers and bears.
Oh my!
Oh my!
Wait, no, that's Chicago, right? Chicago Bears? Detroit Lions. Yeah,
Yo,
never mind.
There's Detroit Lions. Is that a real thing?
That's a baseball team, right? Detroit
I
Lions.
think it's their
I don't
football
know.
team,
I think it's a football team, and I'm not even a sports guy.
which I am now 100% convinced that they got their name from Harry Bennett having lions.
That's what I was gonna like ask.
Yeah,
That's it now. That's
Yeah.
canon. So
Detroit Lions is the football, and Tigers is baseball.
there you go.
Yeah.
They're
Wow.
almost, I'm going to go ahead and assume that it's not a coincidence they have both of those in their city, and this asshole who
At
was
both
in,
of those in his house.
yeah. Yeah. So that's in my opinion, that's where that's coming from.
I mean, it's more plausible than any other explanation.
Yo, what if we actually got the order of this mixed up and like those teams already existed? So when you were reading that like he had lions and tigers in his house, it was actually just a bunch of like football and baseball players roaming the halls.
Well, they
Every
do.
now and then he would let them out of their cages.
I suppose they had the money. Like they could have bought baseball players and like professional sports players. They clearly had the fucking money. If they got castle money, they got it. Now, so Bennett Castle and Harry's hideout were on one property. And Harry's hideout was an above ground bunker made to look like a log cabin. So that was like in like the backyard, basically. And it had a secret attic with 360-degree gun posts up at the top. Yeah. So like he could fire on people who were coming to get him. And Bennett's Lodge in Farwell, Michigan had a moat, a literal moat.
Ooh.
Now, despite these absurd security measures, apparently a mobster upset with Harry for foiling a kidnapping grift he had snuck onto the property, forced his way into the castle, and surprised Harry in his living room and shot him in the stomach. So,
Nice.
you know, I'm going to go ahead and say not nice. He should learn to shoot better because Harry Bennett lived to see another day. So,
We need to train comrades.
yeah, for real. Like, you should learn how to shoot properly because this story is full of like failed assassination attempts. The whole story, just everything. They learn to shoot people. My God.
It reminds me of the joke, what do you do if you see a cop with half his head blown off? Stop laughing and keep shooting.
Jesus.
Yeah. So like he lived, and the cops, by the way, later got this fucking mobster and like they just killed him. No trial, no nothing. They killed him, and they sent Harry a picture of it, demonstrating who they were really working for, of course.
Their class alliance.
Yeah.
They Michael Reinhold him.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, back at this time, and this becomes, you know, relevant in some of the other stories we've got, but the police were like, they were a private security force for the rich, more so than they are today. Like today they are, but like it's more institutional. Like it's just through how the institution is set up that it works today. Back then they were literally just paid. They were just, that's where their allegiances were. And it was a lot more visible than it is today, which how people grew up in like the years following this, like boomers and shit. I don't understand how they ever had respect for police because they lived through the time when like the police were literally just paid fucking thugs for the rich, more so than they are today. Again, I cannot make that more clear. They still are that, but like somehow they were worse. It's crazy. So I don't understand how like there is even cop worship in this country, because like their origins, I mean, they were just so fucking blatant about it. So yeah, despite all the security stuff, it wasn't really that effective, apparently. And the mob is another kind of villain in our story. They kind of go after everybody, unfortunately. They're involved top to bottom. They are trying to get, you know, sorts of lucrative business within the plants among workers. So they were running like gambling operations, and they were trying to like at one point sell fruit in the Ford plant.
All right.
So I think one of the things that they did was like they did some kind of threat against Henry Ford. I think this might have actually had to do with the initial kidnapping attempt of Edsel Ford, but the mob had some kind of kidnapping effort. It got foiled, whatever. And before long, the mob kind of got like a contract through one of their legal subsidiaries or whatever. They were given a contract to sell all the fruit in the River Rouge plant. Apparently that was lucrative. You know, that was one of their quote unquote legit businesses. So yeah, the mob was involved top to bottom. They were kind of going for the capitalists, and they were going against the labor unions. One of the things they did with labor unions was that the mob would like get involved in the union, and then they would try and skim like membership dues. And they would also, on the other hand, sell non-strike agreements to companies. So like they would guarantee that like if you pay up for protection, we'll make sure that there's no strike here. So this is, of course, obviously undercutting the union. They were undercutting the companies. They had no allegiances besides making money for themselves. But I think there's something important to learn from kind of the mob here, in that the mob got their way, right? And they got their way from the companies. They got their way from the unions. They were always being fought, but like, and granted, I'm not saying the mob is good guys. They're a villain in our story. However, can we learn something from that in future labor struggles? Just a thought that I'm throwing out there. They got shit done. They got their way. What can we learn from that? I don't know.
The lesson is organized like Kaiser Soze. You just have to be willing to do what the other guy isn't.
Pretty much.
Just go watch The Usual Suspects, or else you won't get that joke.
Oh, I get the joke. It's bleak.
I did not. So I'm just taking you at your word that, you know, be willing to do what the other guy isn't. That's
okay. I feel like we really need to let you know how psychotic that joke is.
Okay.
Kaiser Soze is like, I guess, who's another character in a movie or TV show or something that's that sadistic and evil, but also like Machiavellian. I guess, like, is it Walter White from Breaking Bad, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's a decent comparison.
Somebody threatened to kill Kaiser Soze's family, so he killed his family to prove that they couldn't get one up on him.
Yeah, that's his introduction.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. My God.
Yes. So be willing to do what you have to get the job done.
Okay. Short of that, apparently. But
why do you think I don't have a family? Getting shit done.
Okay, so that's our introduction for our first, major villain, Harry Bennett. Again, he's the guy who's going to be a problem at Ford, the main problem. So back to like the Ford Hunger March, which again is back in March of 1932. Despite the brutality of the service department, there was a saying in the plant among workers, a saying I totally love, $6 a day plus parts. So the idea being this is kind of, they're paid their wage, and of course they're stealing equipment, parts, whatever, to make a buck on the side, which workers should not have to fucking do, obviously, but it's kind of a funny little thing that people were doing to get by. This is kind of like how things work at like the junkyard, right? The junkyard is where you go to get used parts off these cars, and everybody knows your pockets are full. Nobody's checking, but like everyone, it's factored in the price of the parts because you're leaving with your toolbox is going to have the extra parts you need. Whatever you can fit, people are walking away out of the junkyard with. And that's just accepted and normal. Ford didn't like it as much, but hey, whatever. There was only so much they could
I
do.
never once thought to do that at the U-Pullet now. That I've been to U-Pullet like all of 2 times, and I'm pissed I didn't think to just grab other things.
Yep.
I've never paid for a junkyard sensor in my life. Not once.
Yeah.
If it fits in a pocket, that's where it's going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you mean? I had 4 pounds of fuses in my pocket when I got here.
I bought those from home.
Yeah. I mean, I'll at least take hardware, put that in my toolbox or whatever. You know.
Yeah. Or whenever you're so like, let's say you need a part for whatever your car is. So if you're a listener and you're going to the junkyard, got to think, you know, when you go, let's say you're getting an alternator or a starter, whatever the fuck you're getting, doesn't matter. Take all the sensors you can. Everyone on the engine, your cam sensors, your crankshaft position sensor, all of that shit. Take it because it fits in a pocket, and that's shit that goes bad pretty regularly. And the OEM sensors are the best quality. Yeah, going to the parts store, it's kind of a crapshoot sometimes. So get those OEM sensors, clean them up, put them in the new one when you need it. So good to have those extra parts.
I think I've told the other guys on Cars and Comrades this, but expert level junkyard hack, if you're not sure how to do something, find a junkyard that has the car that you're working on. Practice on the car in the junkyard. So if you break something or it doesn't go the way that you expect it to, you learned a lesson on a car that isn't yours.
These are real pro tips, to be honest.
Yo, that's my best advice that I've ever given fucking anyone wanting to work on their own car. Find a junkyard car that you can practice on.
Also, if you're in a junkyard, fucking look around, dude. People leave shit. I found a brand new set of brake rotors in the junkyard like last month, and they charged me $7 a piece for them, and I flipped them for $100. They weren't for my car, but like, fuck it, someone needs them, you know?
Right.
A guy in my van club found a huge box of vintage porn.
Okay.
Dude, that's priceless.
That's a weird thing to find in a junkyard, but okay.
It was in someone's van.
Of course it was in a van. It wasn't going to be in any other type of car. No. It was definitely going to be in a van.
I've heard some stories of people finding things in police auction cars that the cops missed.
I was gonna say.
So you might find someone's stash or a big wad of cash or something.
Dude, now I want to go buy like police auction cars and just like hope I end up with like a kilo of coke.
I don't know. You might not want to find that. Someone might be looking for it.
Well, if they don't know where it was.
Yeah.
Okay. So back in the plant, that's how workers were seeing their job. They knew they weren't getting paid enough. So one of the ways they got back was, stealing parts and tools and shit. And, good for them. Of course, this was risky with the Ford service department that we've described already, but, hey, workers did what they could to get by. After the market crash of 1929, by 1932, 80% of the industry had stopped producing. Ford had laid off 2/3 of its workforce, and the UAW and communist labor organizers planned a march. So this is like, the depths of the Depression, and the auto industry which was at the time, had recently become like the biggest major industry in the US. So it employed a ton of fucking people because it was pretty labor intensive. And they had laid off a shitload of people. People were fucking starving. And they knew that the automakers had the ability to cough up more jobs, more money, and the economy fucking needed it. Of course, you don't hear this kind of stuff. What you hear, today is that classic old story of, oh, Henry Ford gave his workers a raise so that they could afford to buy the cars that they were making. How wonderful.
Right. What a guy.
Chill move.
Yeah. When the reality couldn't be further from the fucking truth. So they planned a march. Workers demanded jobs for laid off workers, the right to unionize, medical aid in the plants because people got fucking hurt all the time, better pay, and an end to racial discrimination in hiring. Now, mind you, this is 1932, and like that's an important thing to be asking for at this time. Again, this is like Detroit, so it's not like the South per se, but like this is a big deal.
So to make sure I'm keeping things straight, this was the union doing this when they still had a lot of Communist Party leaders?
Yes.
Okay,
So
that tracks then, because CPUSA was doing killer fucking work in the 30s, man. Like, their organizing efforts, from everything I've read, were second to none.
Yeah. And that was like this particular strike, which was not exactly successful, I don't believe, but like this was a major precursor to what was like to come later. And yeah, they had real solid fucking demands. So they had all these demands, and 4,000 people marched from Detroit to the Dearborn River Rouge plant. So it was a pretty sizable fucking march. Marchers were sprayed with freezing water on their way to the plant, and it was, it was very cold. I don't remember the temperature that they said, but, it was freezing water. So this was like, it was in I think the teens to the 20s on this day.
Ooh.
So it's crazy fucked up. We have trouble organizing today, and a lot of what really killed unions is somehow just like legal fucking fictions that were created to stop unions. And it's crazy how effective that is when, back in the day, I mean, they sprayed water at workers, they used actual guns on people, and that wasn't enough to stop workers. So it feels kind of sad that it was just shitty legislation to seem to hurt workers a lot more in the long run. So on their way to the plant, they were sprayed with freezing water, and Bennett led Ford's opposition to the Ford Hunger March of unemployed workers. Dearborn police and Ford Service Department men, including Bennett, opened fire on the protesters as they advanced toward the Ford River Rouge complex. 4 marchers were shot to death, 60 others were shot and wounded, and Bennett himself was hospitalized after being hit with a rock. Now, as the story goes, he was like chasing workers down in his car, and someone hit him with a fucking rock. Good on them. Didn't kill him. It really did hurt him though. He had like a concussion and shit like that. But he did open fire on the crowd after that, shooting indiscriminately. And when his police friends grabbed him to drag him to safety, he apparently reached into the holster of one of the cops, pulled their gun to continue firing on workers as he was being dragged away.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love the idea that like the cops are trying to like protect him while he's opening fire into a crowd.
Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah,
No, I'm shocked.
fucking awesome. And I mean, that's how fucking crazy this shit was. And this is weirdly like, this is kind of the march that you don't hear much about. Like we'll go into some other strikes, and there's a lot of like more famous examples of strikes and stuff, but like this was one of the most fucking deadly. I mean, 60 people were wounded by a live gunfire, 4 of them dead, and they were sprayed with freezing water and shit. This was a fucking disaster. I mean, incredibly fucking dangerous. Workers really had to be fucking brave to fight for rights at this time. Now, of course, following this, Edsel, Ford's only son, felt sympathy for the workers. And he encouraged his father to negotiate with the union, which Ford told his son he should toughen up and be more like Harry Bennett.
Mm-hmm.
So Edsel Ford, while being an awful capitalist in his own respect, I mean, he's no socialist by any means, but like the guy was a lot less sadistic than his father. We can say that.
The best phrase we have for him is not a psychopath.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this march really didn't lead to anything at the time. It was a huge effort, but it didn't really lead to any gains at the time. And this was kind of the indication that Ford was going to be particularly difficult to actually organize, because this made it very clear just how violent the Ford Service Department was going to be and how much they were going to resist any attempts at unionizing. So this was kind of the first major loss, and they knew it was going to be bad. Now, later on, I think in, I don't have the date, but the Kelsey Hayes Wheel Company, there was a strike there. And I believe, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a guess. Someone can look this up and correct me if I'm wrong, but this was in 1936, I believe.
If you're wrong, you're off the podcast, and we're not doing the rest of the episodes on Walter Reuther.
That's it. We'll get halfway through.
Purged.
The way this goes is Walter decided that it would be smart to get at Ford through organizing a crucial supplier, right? So Kelsey Hayes was the company that made brake shoes for Ford. They made brake shoes and I believe wheels as well. Incredibly important. If you are making cars, they have to have brakes, and this is who made them. So this is kind of where like they want to organize Ford, but they know that like they're not going to be able to do that. This is where they kind of start thinking, hey, let's go after some of the suppliers. So
yeah, it's a damn smart move.
Yeah, and so Victor, Walter's brother, actually got a job here. Victor's working here and he's talking to workers. So I think this is like salting or whatever. And he's talking to workers in the plant. And one of the things they come up with real quick is that women are paid far less than men at the Kelsey Hayes plant, which was normal at the time. Women were paid far less, even when they did more work than the men, which Victor admits pretty quickly. Yeah, there were tons of women who did plenty more work than he did, and they got paid significantly less money. And that was one of the demands of the strike, was that, women would be paid equally to men in the plant. So Walter decided to get forward through organizing their supplier. They had just gone through a line speed up. So they wanted to make more shit and they just sped up the assembly line. Hey, get with it, workers. You got to work faster. Line's moving quicker and you got to keep up. And this, of course, led to injuries and people were getting hurt pretty seriously, too. There was a woman who fainted while working after this speed up because the conditions were so fucking brutal. And so she fainted. Victor then went to her and he asked if she could faint on schedule, to which she said, yes, she could. So the plan was set that at a shift change in a coming week or whatever, she faints. And this is right at this shift change. So it's like this really kind of delicate balance. And Victor pulls the switch to shut down the assembly line. And he starts screaming about, we're on strike, blah, blah. And so this is where the strike starts. And this is where we see, I think this is the first time in the North where we see the introduction of the sit-down strike. Now, the sit-down strike starts in, I believe, auto plants in the South. So in Georgia, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure, I know for a fact, the sit-down strike was pioneered in the South. This is the first time it's being used in the North. Victor pulls the switch, they stop working, and he gets up and he's given a barn burner speech, right? About, how this speed up sucks and how workers need to band together, blah, blah, blah. And of course, the manager comes down and, he's screaming at people, get back to work or you're fucking fired, blah, 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 blah. And he gets to Victor, who's giving his speech, and he says, no, motherfucker, you got to get back to work. And he says, no, there's only one person that can get us back to work. And the guy goes, oh, yeah, who's that? Says his name is Walter Reuther. Here's his phone, right? Now, at the local 174 on the west side of Detroit, so the UAW local, Walter's waiting by the phone, and he knows this call is coming in. So, of course, call comes in, and Walter says, oh, yeah, I'll come down there. I'll get him back to work. Walter shows up to the fucking plant, and apparently, according to Victor, he starts finishing the speech that Victor was in the middle of. Mm-hmm. The manager don't like this. He's like, hey, motherfucker, I thought you were supposed to get him back to work. And Walter says, yeah, I'll get him back to work, but I got to organize him first. And this is where they start their organizing drive in the plant. So the strike goes on for 9 days where they're blocking up this critical supplies for Ford. And through this process, they get a bunch of people to join the union, and Kelsey Hayes recognizes the unions and gives workers raises, including especially for women, who they started paying equally to men, relatively, probably not perfect. But yeah, I mean, really, this was a huge win for the UAW at the time. So this is the first instance that we see in Detroit of the sit-down strike, and it was incredibly effective. So,
hey, just real quick, Connor, sorry. Is everybody cool if we go till 6 our time? I don't know what that is for you guys. So another 20 more minutes, and then we'll call that a night.
Yeah,
sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. So just keep that in mind. Do I guess another 10 to 15 minutes worth of material, and then we'll leave the last few minutes for our wrap up and call it part 2 for there.
Sounds good. So let's go ahead and I will wrap it up with the Kelsey Hayes strike, and let me see if there's any contextual bits I can add in here.
Ward, I noticed earlier that you have an FN box behind you, and I didn't want to interrupt anything, but is it a SCAR?
Unfortunately, no. It is just a FN15.
Oh, that's still pretty sweet.
Oh,
Nice.
Love the LPVO game. Vortex?
Yeah, Vortex, and then offset Hollow Sun.
Nice.
Weapon
Oh,
light.
that's so sick.
That looks almost exactly like my setup. Yours is probably just a little more Gucci than mine.
Yeah, it's probably more Gucci. I spent too much money on this. I got everything on deals for sure, but it was still pretty pricey.
Yeah. That's sick.
Like, I would love to get a Scar for sure. Those
Yeah.
things are fucking sweet.
I figured I'd ask. I figured the chances were pretty low considering they're like $3,800, but you never know.
Yeah. Fucking
They're how much?
ridiculous.
I mean, you can find them low threes, but I think going rate right now is like 36 to 3,800.
Yeah, they are definitely pretty expensive, but they're so fucking badass.
Yeah, and they just came out with a non-reciprocating charging handle version,
which I really like. It's even more tempting. I'm about to buy a suppressor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've been looking into that. I don't know if I can do it right now, but
Yeah, it's depending on what suppressor you're buying, like that's like the biggest cost of it, but then you also have the $200 tax stamp.
yeah.
But the easiest way. What's that?
And then like 4 months of waiting.
Oh, that's like, no, you wish it was 4 months of waiting.
Yeah, I think that's what their website says, but
Oh yeah, that's what they say, but in practice, it's like you're waiting 9 to 12 months.
Cool.
absurd.
Yeah.
Nice. And then you are definitely on the list.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I really fucking want a suppressor, so.
Oh, to tie that to the automotive things, I've seen people make them out of oil filters.
Oh yeah, you could absolutely do that.
Yeah, we actually mentioned that last week because I was fumbling for the word. It's solvent trap. But if you start searching for any kind of gun parts online, you will get recommended solvent traps, which again, don't fucking buy one. Don't put it together.
You can do it straight up with a Fram oil filter though, too. You just need the thread adapter.
And some crazy big sights.
Yes. Yeah, you're gonna need some really tall sights.
Stack a couple risers.
I could do it with a set of blueprints and a lathe.
Well, so you could also, if you use a 350Z oil filter, don't need big sights. Very, very small.
Nice.
Yeah, just so you know. This probably isn't going to air, so I don't care if it does. But yeah, the 350Z uses a very, very small.
For educational purposes only.
Yeah, it's a very small oil filter, so you can get away with using it for that.
The ones I saw, they were those like big diesel truck filters, I think, to make it more silent, but I don't know.
Yeah, some of those oil filters work like better than a lot of manufactured suppressors.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm about to form one of Fram.
Yeah, maybe not in terms of like longevity. Like they're not gonna, like after like a few thousand rounds, it's not gonna hold up nearly as well. But like the first few hundred rounds, it's usually quieter than like your average mid-priced suppressor.
Well, that's funny because they're so at that point they're so disposable that it's cheaper to just keep going through them.
Yep.
What do you just drill it out or?
No, you just shoot through it. You screw it the fuck on, drill your own hole with the bullet. Call it good.
That seems awfully
The
dangerous.
first shot's not going to be accurate, but after that, you're good.
Is that really how you would do it? I would assume you would drill it out.
Huh. You can just shoot through it. Call it good.
Okay.
I love that.
Wild.
You could do that with those solvent traps that aren't drilled out.
I did see somebody on like a forum that tried that and it didn't go so well for them. Like it kind of went off and it fucked things up.
Depending on which one it is, but especially like oil filters, like just shoot through that motherfucker.
We'll have to have like a separate conversation where we discuss firearms because I own and understand basic safety, but I am not like deep in the weeds with that stuff.
It ends up sounding very much like your car talk, where you start talking about manufacturers and parts, and people judge you for which brand you went with on which part and everything.
Yeah, a lot of crossover there.
Yeah, how you guys talk about cars is how I talk about guns.
It's exactly the same.
Good.
Okay, that tracks. Yeah. Now I'm curious. Which one's more expensive?
Yeah, I was going to say, word of advice: don't get into both. You'll have no money ever.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, you'll be so fucking poor and in debt if you go.
Dude, I mean, it's like
y'all. I've got like 4 expensive ass fucking hobbies.
Let me guess, guitars.
No.
That's another one you can sink a shit ton of money into for no fucking reason.
That's my number 3. Yeah.
I'm gonna show my nerd colors here, dude. I got a huge Warhammer 40K army. That shit.
I've heard that's expensive. Oh my god, I've heard that's outrageous.
Yo, and like I kind of am counting multiple like automotive things as like separate things, but like drag racing, Harleys, and like just hopping up your regular ass vehicles. Dude, like Harley motors are wild. Like it's dumb how expensive they are.
They're also air cooled, and I'm very against them for that reason.
I'm very pro them for that reason. Reject modernity, embrace Harley Davidson.
I swear, if you start rocking Porsches because they're air cooled, we can't be friends anymore.
No, strictly V-twin.
All right, good. You should put a V-twin in a Porsche, though. That would be dope. And really piss off some people. Like, hey, it's still air cooled, so.
Wait, Connor, you're against Harleys because they're air cooled? Every motorcycle from that era was air cooled.
Yeah, but they're still doing it. That's the fucking difference. That's the difference.
The new one's water cooled.
I guess the newest ones, as of the last few years, you can still get, I'm pretty sure, air cooled Harleys though. No.
They released the new engine that they're putting in the Sportster, and it is water cooled. They might still have a big twin model that's air cooled, but they have the bigger, like the larger displacement ones are oil cooled, actually.
I mean, that's fine. It's just Harleys had like that where the back cylinder would wear out faster than the front one because it wasn't cooled. Yeah.
I don't know how much of an issue that's been in decades. I think that's more old school stuff, but yeah.
Okay. Could be. I also don't like that. I don't like Harley for lots of reasons. Let's just say.
They're like most of the people who own them suck.
And they're expensive. True. And they're mostly about the accessories and the gear.
They make decent bikes for a lifestyle brand.
Okay, here you go.
I haven't seen a V-twin in a Porsche, but I did see someone took a Moto Guzzi engine and put it in a Fiat 500. That was pretty sick.
It's fucking sick.
But
I like how Mike said we've got 20 minutes left, so we stopped talking about
it. Guns and cars, guys. We got it. Let's use it this time.
I was going to interrupt and say, Connor, is there any context that you wanted to give on this next strike before we wrap it up for the night?
No, not really. So, I mean, and I don't know, maybe you just cut all this out and like just move to me saying that's all I have for the Kelsey Hayes strike. But I mean, that's pretty much what I've got for the Kelsey Hayes strike. It was Walter and Victor put their heads together, came up with an idea to get into the plant. They did, and then they organized a sit-down strike. So this was, again, the first time they did the sit-down to great effect, and the sit-down strike is basically going to be their tool from this point in the late 30s to the mid-40s. I mean, the sit-down strike, I think, becomes illegal after Taft-Hartley, I'm pretty sure, but like the sit-down strike, just to be clear, is where instead of walking off the job and like going outside to picket, they just sit down in the fucking plant and make sure that the manufacturer can't operate the machinery because there's workers in the way. So it's a pretty genius way to do it, where it's like you're not giving them access to their capital to like bring in scabs and like run this shit without you. You're clogging up both the labor and the capital in the form of the machinery. So like literal wrench in the gear, essentially.
Like actual effective protest, which, Connor, are you telling me that since then, that over the years of labor unions slowly but surely losing their power in America, that the law has been structured in such a way that any effective protest has been made illegal, therefore giving the cops a reason and justification to come in and violently break you up and arrest you, whereas ineffective protest is totally celebrated and permitted in zones that are designated for exactly that?
I'm not going to say that's exactly what I'm saying, but that's exactly what I'm saying. Yes, that's 100%. Yeah, that's it. And like, that's the moral of the story. And I think that's why I want to keep, and I'm sure this is going to get real fucking old. I don't know if I'll do this in every one of these episodes we do, but those questions I kind of raised at the beginning, that's why I'm raising them. The question about legality, I think, is something we have to start to challenge. And maybe that's just like my inner, anarchists just being like, hey, maybe we should just like not follow these laws. Like, what the fuck are they going to do? That I want to ask that question. What the fuck are they going to do? Because we don't see sit down strikes anymore, and shit is getting worse for workers. So,
and verify.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, all right, that's what I want to, that's the kind of
buy a suppressor and register it.
But yeah, that's the moral of at least this part of the story is, let's question what all this is for. What does it mean to make concessions? What kind of protest is effective, and how should we think about making those sorts of decisions? How do we plan for that kind of stuff? The Kelsey Hayes strike was a win. the hunger march on Ford was not such a win. It probably should have been, but of course, Henry Ford was just willing to be that much more fucking craven than they expected. So workers died in that fight. And it's a story that I think gets kind of swept under the rug in a lot of the documentaries and a lot of the discussion of the labor movement in general. That one isn't talked about as much. And I mean, it was fucking terribly brutal. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at now. Coming up on the next part, I'm going to stop saying how many parts we're going to do because it seems like it keeps getting longer and longer. But kind of what we're going to go through next for sure is going to be the GM sit-down strike, followed by what we now know today as the Battle of the Overpass, which was a leafleting effort at Ford. So these are going to be pretty big pivotal moments for Walter and Victor Reuther and their kind of actual on the ground organizing. And this is what propels them to, or part of what propels them to leadership within the UAW and the labor movement more broadly. So that's where we're at. And that's where we'll be picking up with next.
Cool. I like it. That's a good teaser.
More about the hunger march. Is that what you said it was called?
Yeah, you can call it a number of things. I mean, you could call it the march on, I think I've heard it called the Dearborn March, the March on River Rouge. They called it.
I find that interesting because I know that CPUSA organized similar marches in that era down south when they were doing the drive for the sharecroppers unions. So now I'm like, I don't know. I have like a lot of fascination with like the Communist Party of the USA in like that era, because that seems to be when they were like actually getting shit done and like making real moves and weren't like trying to revise themselves out of relevance.
And I think a lot of the go-between what was happening in organizing efforts in the South and the North was probably the Communist Party was probably sharing a lot of this information and making sure that they knew what worked and what didn't. And that's how information was being spread. And that's how, again, we see solidarity strikes and stuff. That kind of stuff, I think, was the Communist Party infrastructure was effective at this time. So, for all the criticisms that we may or may not have, that kind of interconnectedness made a huge difference in organizing efforts, it seems. So
I don't know if anyone else in here has read the book Hammer and Hoe, but
I was just about to bring that up. It's on my list to read.
I haven't finished it because I'm really good at getting 3/4 of the way through a book and then getting distracted. Mm-hmm. But in general, it's about how the Communist Party was able to organize. It was something like 70,000 people in the South, like Alabama, Mississippi, primarily Alabama, I think. And it was one of the largest, if I remember correctly, it was the largest membership base for CPUSA at the time. And it was mostly in poor black sharecroppers. And yeah, like they had hunger marches. They like tried to organize strikes. There was like, if you're interested in that era of labor organizing, that's a really great book to check out. It's what really initially piqued my interest in that era of CPUSA.
Yeah, right. And this reminded me, I was thinking we might want to do an episode in the future on the NUMMI plant in California. I think I might have mentioned it in a previous episode because it's now a Tesla plant, but it was a GM plant back in the day, and a lot of the issues that you were talking about came up back then also, but it was like in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, keeps repeating.
Yeah.
Never ends, apparently.
And it's going on with Tesla today still. So
yeah, that's all I got for this installment. So I don't know, come check out our podcast if you're not one of our listeners listening to this. And if you're not on our social media, we're on Instagram, Facebook, marginally, Twitter, Reddit, Hexbear. Search Cars and Comrades and we should come right up. So check us out.
Hell yeah. Cool. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate you taking the lead on these and doing all this research. It's entertaining to listen to because, like I said, I acquainted myself with Walter Reuther and his story and everything, but hearing it all in depth like this is it's pretty great to I like story time like this. This is fun.
I just hope I'm like not rambling too much because I'm
no, it's all good, dude.
Okay.
That's solid.
Okay. It's a very interesting story, I think.
You guys will appreciate too when it gets to like the 60s and 70s and I get to start going on about drum, because then we get to mix like a Walter Reuther as a labor organizer with also an actual Marxist-Leninist subset within the UAW.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the part of that movie is it's finally got in the news, right?
Yeah.
The like first few minutes of that movie are great because the guy, I forget what his name is, just explains Marxism like just perfectly. It's really well done.
It was at that time where, like, you know, you get like the Black Panther Party and Drum and stuff. Their take on Marxism was very, very enticing to a lot of people. I mean, they put it in a way that like my dumbass just can't. I'm not.
Yeah.
Technically, I'm not a Marxist Leninist, so like I can't put it that great anyway. But they had a really good way of speaking to people that I'm like, yeah, I'm with that.
Like the Black Panthers literally had reading programs where they were teaching people to read using like Capital and shit. So like,
yeah,
it's easy to get the ideas across.
Yeah.
That'd be a tough one to learn on.
I've heard that from a lot of places, but I've never seen any sort of confirmation that that was what they were learning to read with. It's a fun story. I don't know if it's true.
Yeah.
Actually, no. There was some intense literature that I forget the book off the top of my head. Yeah, there was a book by a Black Panther Party member where he talked about them learning to read using, it wasn't Capital specifically, but it was some pretty intense political economy kind of stuff.
I remember hearing that they had to look up like every other word, but they just would stick with a paragraph or a page for as long as it took, and they would get through it.
Yeah, I feel like that was I think that was an interview with Angela Davis where I heard that same thing. I think it was Angela Davis who said that. I could be wrong though. Could be multiple people who said that.
But anyway, let's finish up with the plugs. Ward, go ahead and plug your pages.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Millennial Leftists, common spelling, no underscore, and on Twitter at Wardlawley, WARDLAWLEY.
And then, so for Jaron, we'll plug his website. That's JARONPEARLMAN.com. And for Cosper, their Patreon is patreon.com/COSPER_. Our Twitter is Twitter/Turn Leftist Pod. And for everything else, just find us on the link tree. That's linktree/Turn Leftist. And I think that's about it. I'm going to leave off the Patreon since we're already running into like a 3-hour episode, but I will plug the Patreons again next time. But needless to say, thank you all for your contributions. We greatly appreciate it. So, yeah, we'll pick up next week with the continuation of the Walter Reuther story, do part 3 of however many it takes.
I'm sorry.
No, dude, like I said, I can't tell you how down I am.
Okay,
Yeah, it's been fun.
Thanks again, guys. All right, we'll see you next time.
Yep.
Like you should.
Later.
Have a good one.
Adios.
You're lucky that 100-shot of Nas didn't blow the welds on the intake. Now me and the mad scientist gotta rip apart the block and replace the piston rings you fried.
The free market mythology, it argues that the most ruthless, selfish, opportunistic, greedy, calculating plunderers applying the most heartless measures in cold-blooded pursuit of corporate interest and wealth accumulation will produce the best results for all of us. Through something called the invisible hand.
My calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
Over the last century, the U.S. government has done everything in its power to snuff out alternatives to its rule. From roundups to mass arrests of thousands of anarchists, socialists, leftists in the U.S., making it illegal to even be a communist, to carrying out military interventions in over 70 nations just since World War II, causing untold human misery, all in the name of fighting ideas.
What are you smiling about?
Dude, I almost had you.
You can jail a revolutionary, but you can't jail a revolution.